So, all right, rock and roll. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Experience More podcast. Super pumped and excited for each and every one of you guys to be here back with us today. I'm excited about this episode really wholeheartedly. It's one that I've wanted to do for a good amount of time because the individual that's going to be joining us here today is someone that, you know, we, again, really met through relationships of the outdoor space, through and via social media and just mutual friends across the board. And I think it's just the power of the outdoor community as a whole. And I feel like every time that him and I have kind of connected or seen each other at events or even just following each other via social media, like there's always been really good conversations that have come out of it, and just getting to learn a little bit more about him. So I'm really excited for you guys to be able to get to know him a little bit more. He's an individual who is a phenomenal content producer, and it is really good, I believe, at telling stories, and not just his own, but telling other people's stories and helping them cultivate that. And it's something that I'm looking forward to just kind of even diving deeper today, and just the ethos of the Experience More podcast, of experiencing more of your life. So with all that being said, I don't need his ego to blow up any bigger than it is or talk any more on him. But my man, Jake Lishen with a mission, as he was he came in, he totally caught me just like repping this before we jumped on the call. But Jake, I'm pumped to have you, man. Tell people about yourself.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate you having me. No, I was actually excited there. Your intro was probably the most, from the content side of things, your intro was probably the most accurate of any of the podcasts I've been lucky to be a guest on. You know, I try to give credit where credit is due, and while I do get the chance to create some content for our Land Limited and Outdoor Creatives businesses, I do spend most of my time on the producer director side of things. And the guys that work with me, Matt, Adam, the rest of the crew, I just hats off to those guys, because what they do and how they create the content is just stellar. So sometimes you'll join a podcast and they're like, oh, this content creator, and I have to like preface, it's like, hey, let's give credit to the guys who deserve a lot of that credit. And you know, a lot of that being Adam and Matt, and my credit where I feel like it's earned. I definitely have a thing with, I don't like stealing people's thunder or taking, you know, false accolades.
No. Well, I think, man, every time we've met, it's I don't know, there's something. I like to think that I have a really good judge of character, but also, like, I mean, there's just, when you're around different people, there's always an energy. Like, you're able to feel, I think I'm a firm believer of like, hey, you're one of kind of two people. You're individuals who either light up the room, right? Or you darken the room, or kind of the other side of that is like, you're the individual that, you know, people get better when you enter, or they get better when you leave. And I definitely have to say, like, you're one of those individuals that people get better when you enter the room, just because of the energy that you ultimately put off. With that, I know you have been surrounded by a lot of very high achieving individuals. You have been able to produce some phenomenal films in that. You know, it's just cool to be able to have the conversations we've had and realize that there is just more, there's just a subtle humbleness to you and a passion behind everything that you do. And it definitely makes sense why you're, you know, the content that you put out, not just like the videos or things like that, but the content you have has depth to it. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it makes sense. Thanks, man. I mean, we try to do that. You know, for everybody, just to kind of catch up to speed. This is the 8th year of business for my business partner Matt and I. We've been best friends since middle school. After college, you know, worked in an industry, decided we weren't happy after 4 years, and started this creative, production house, I guess you could call it. There's a myriad of different names. And 8 years into it, you know, we're still kicking, still alive. Not that we don't have our struggles and challenges at times, but we're still doing it. And you know, I think, you know, Jake, to your point, you know, over the years, I think we're interested in telling stories that we feel like make a difference. And you know, I think it's, once again, going back to the credit situation, like a lot of times those stories are made so well because of the people being as authentic as they are. And, you know, our job is to basically be just real people with them. And I think that, you know, one of the things that's a difference maker for us, and the thing that we pride ourselves in, is both Matt and myself and, you know, anybody else that works with us, we're just very thankful and appreciative that we get to do this, because we've all lived other lives where we weren't content in the level of work that we're doing or the type of work that we're doing. You know, even though that the current job and the current thing we do has its ups and downs, it's still a lot better than where we came from, and having been small town kids that came from nothing and kind of have figured out some of those parts of life. When you spend time with people, you realize that, you got to add value to their life and just try to connect with them in a way that allows them to be the best version of themselves around you and the most comfortable version of themselves around you.
Right.
And that's just in life in general, but even more so from a filmmaking perspective. If people aren't comfortable around you, or if they're not authentic around you, you're not going to be able to capture the real version of themselves or a really captivating piece, and that's just something that we hold near and dear. Like, we spend a lot of time with the people that we're working with, not even sitting down from a storytelling perspective, just to hang out, just to hear their life and their story and understand who they are. And, at some point we're going to have to point a camera in their face, and I don't want to make them feel like they're on the Channel 6 news.
Exactly. Yeah. Make them feel more of that campfire vibe of just hey, we're
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I know, I had a hard time even kind of thinking about it. It's all right, there's so many avenues we could ultimately go down and I'd love to be able to tap on. But really, I think just kind of the overarching, yes, we could go even more so into, the production side of all this different stuff, which, I think people can go through and definitely check out Land Limited, the creative pages that you guys have to get a little bit more context there. That's all cool. I would really like to get to know kind of the backstory of where the love and the passion for the outdoor space ultimately come from. And then, of course, we got connected through the Mobile Hunter Roadshow, Cody and the whole crew up there, AJ, a lot of different just good relationships that ultimately kind of connected through there. But I want us to take it back. What got you involved in the outdoors, in hunting, passion of the archery side of things? What's kind of that journey look like for you?
Yeah, I started. I was involved in the outdoors in some way, shape, or form from. Before I can physically remember. I was born and raised in Central Florida, in a real small town, one stoplight town. Everybody's perception of Florida is basically Miami or Tampa or Orlando, but the reality is most of the state is a lot of nothing, a lot of just farm country. And we lived in a big rodeo community. Barrel racing and cowboying was a big deal. And, where my parents had moved into this community, we didn't have much. My mom and dad fell in love with this old home from, that was built in, I think it was 1902 or 1904, decided they were going to renovate it to turn it into, our dream home, which ended up taking 20 some years, but it happened as home projects do. Yeah, we didn't have much. So growing up, my mom and dad like to tell stories about, how, mom would be in the kitchen or at the house or something, and dad would come home from work and she'd be like, if you want meat with dinner, you're going to go catch it. And he'd go out in the lake and catch a bunch of largemouth bass and flay them up. And I know that hurts everybody's ears to hear, but
Yeah.
when you're in poverty, you're in poverty and you got to eat.
Yeah.
And dad loved fishing and loved hunting. Those were things that he grew up with. Hunting more so on the small game side or upland. Dad loved quail hunting and squirrels but primarily was a fisherman. So the first involvement for me was going out in the canoe with him, while my mom was holding me when I was little and casting a Snoopy rod or whatever it was, that I had.
Oh man, a lot of people don't know what Snoopy is today. That's wild. Yeah. That's awesome. I think you're the only one that's ever said Snoopy before in my life. I love that.
Oh yeah. It blows my mind how many realizations that I have, even from the mid 2000s, when I hear music and I'm like, man, there's a whole generation of kids who have never heard Hurricane Chris say "A Bay Bay" on that song.
Or it's coming back around and it's cool again, and they're like, oh, how do you know this song? It's this came out when I was your age, kind of thing. I'm we're all getting older.
Yeah, somebody was trying to explain to me that Soulja Boy was an old head the other day, and I was like, he's not old. And then I have to realize I'm I was 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's wild.
Forever ago. So,
yeah.
But anyways, no. So my parents were pretty adamant about that, and then honestly, because we didn't have much growing up, we didn't have a lot of luxuries to just recreate outside of the outdoors. We didn't really have good heating and air, and my mom was pretty adamant about limited TV time. So they would just kick us outside. We'd have to go figure everything out and go explore and just learn to be creative and enjoy what we had accessible to us. We were picking up sticks and playing, cowboys and Indians, or doing whatever we were going to do, or running around, pretending to shoot each other, or throwing rocks at each other, just doing all the dumb things kids do. And it evolved into like getting, like Daisy Red Ryder BB guns, and we got those. And, Dad took us out for our first squirrel hunt, and it all kind of, it just grew from there. For the first half of my life, I was much bigger into fishing. I thought that was like my calling. Both my brother and I, and a lot of the men in our family, are excellent fishermen. And it wasn't until I think it was like late middle school that we even considered getting into deer hunting, because we had a lease presented to us in Georgia by some folks that were in the community. And that was the way that you hunted back then. And it definitely is the way you hunted in Georgia and Florida, is you have to have a lease, or at least that was what we thought. Public land wasn't even an inkling in our mind. And Dad got on a lease, and we proceeded to be terrible deer hunters for like the first 2 or 3 years, just while we figured everything out. And then that's kind of how it all started. And like, I think why I fell in love with it was because I got to watch other grown men in my life at the time that I admired, my dad, my uncles, and other men around me. I watched how invested they were in that pursuit, in that activity, and in that hobby. And seeing them, there's something when you're younger, or when you're around a group of men or women, where you're watching people's gears turn. And I think that when you can see people who are so invested in something that they're really thinking about the improvement process and how to get better, and trying to put the puzzle together, whether that's your personal well-being, mental health, fitness, or your pursuit in the outdoors, I think that it's infectious. And that was the bug that bit me, was that community, that camaraderie, and then that desire to always be kind of like chasing a carrot that you could never catch. So it's kind of like, that's the same thing I love about fitness, is I'll never be where I want to be, which is the good thing, in a healthy way, not like I'm looking at myself wishing I was something different, but looking at something going, man, I can always get better today. Like I can always be better. There's always a deer that's going to beat me, or I'm going to struggle in the woods, or I'm going to make a mistake. And that's why I clung to sports as much as I did. That's why I clung to the outdoors. And fast forward to the last, I guess, man, I feel old now. The last like 14 or 15 years, hunting and the outdoors has taken a huge role in my life, more like to replace what football and athletics was for me, So, yeah, I feel like that's probably the most summarized version of the journey that I could give you.
No, I love it, man. Like as you're talking, I mean, from the Snoopy fishing poles, it's funny how similar our upbringings were in different facets in there. Cause I mean, you were out bass fishing at that time. Like I was, using one of Grandpa's rods on the St. Croix River. We were trolling for walleyes, or we were out on the, little sand. It didn't even really have a name. Grandpa just called it the Sandy Lake, right? Or Lake Sandy.
Yep.
And we were out there, fishing for panfish or whatever it was. And it was always come back, clean them. And there's so many cool little stories. Cause that's honestly, like, you and I are very similar in that. Like if there was a weekend that was open, I was fishing the river, or I was learning how to throw a fly rod with with my grandpa, who really got me involved in fishing. Like fishing was the first real gateway piece to where I was like, what are we doing this weekend? I'm going to Grandpa Bob's. Like, I'm going over there. Like, Grandma's got mults and Grandpa's got the fishing poles. So we're hitting that way.
And it was honestly, it was accessible adventure, like in a way that I felt like was, there was just enough risk, like we were very lucky that the home my parents bought and got was on its own little lake that we had access to. So we could put the canoe in every day after school, or do whatever we wanted to do. And I can't tell you, like, just the amount of, we were always within, Mom would do one of those big whistles, and we could hear it echo all across the lake. And that's how we knew to come in, because we didn't have phones,
No.
We were just out there running wild, just raw dogging life. And like my mom was just like, my mom would just like call us in, and the expectation was for you to show up, and we would go out, and my parents knew that they had raised us and trained us in a way to where they felt a way where they felt like we could conduct ourselves within the means of what we were going to get involved in within the risk that we were exposed to in that environment. You know, we knew not to go to certain places, we knew to go to be here, but the lake was kind of like our attainable adventure for being between 8 and all the way through the time when I was in high school. They were pretty much like, here's your paddles, you know, here's a life thing, here's your fishing rods, like, go do your thing. If you have an issue, you know how to swim.
Yeah. No, you said you were 8, like in that kind of range.
I think so. I think it was somewhere around 8 to 10 was when I stopped going with dad. And it started to be like I was responsible for my brother. And dad was always in the back of the canoe and I was in the front. And then somewhere around that window, it might have been closer to 10. But it shifted and I became responsible and moved to the back of the canoe. And then dad left. And at first it was like, just go to this section of the lake so that they could see us the entire time.
Right.
You know, and we could just fish kind of the cove near the house. And then it went to, all right, I'm not worried about you. And then it went to like, I'll see you when you get back.
Yeah.
And we're just 12 and 10 year. My brother was 2 years younger than me. So we're just young kids out there running around. And I think that like that level of, my parents could do that with us because they knew what they had put us through at that point from like an educational life perspective. But that independence was, I feel like, really important for me in my development, not just as an outdoorsman, but as a human. You know, and I, you know, I hope to be able to do that with my own kids one day.
Right. Yep. No, that's, man, again, it's just like parallels. Like your lake was like our little creek that we had running our back stream, and I would literally go up and down that thing for miles, right? Like, which seemed like miles, but we, you know, brook trout and all sorts of stuff in there, and I had all different traps lined throughout it. And that was mom or dad both had the epic parent whistle. That the rule was like, just don't go outside of the range that you can't hear the whistle, and no matter what, be back before dark, kind of thing. Like that was the rule that we had.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's, you said like 8, and that's really like, I mean, that 8, I mean, my brother and I, like, again, my brother's like a year younger than me. So really in that same kind of time frame to where it was like, hey, just make sure your younger brother, right? I got 2, the other one's 7 years younger, but like, at least at that point in time, is like, you're in charge of your younger brother. Like, make sure he stays safe, take care of him. And I think putting that, just being older brothers, like, put that responsibility on me to make sure that he was good, right? But we would just go to town, and there were definitely some times I got my ass smacked because I didn't get back by dark, or there was different things like that.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
there was
I was just about to say there's an infamous Lishan family story that gets told quite frequently, as much as I dislike it, about like we went, you know, this is years later. I'm probably 13 at this point, and we had gone over, and I was at my buddy's house, which was, as a crow flies, probably 500 yards down this dirt road, and we were playing on his PlayStation. It was like probably 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and my mom's whistle was so loud we heard her whistle through the inside of their glassed-in patio. So I knew that she had whistled, and then she called my buddy's grandma who was there, and she's like, "Hey, send the boys home." And I told my younger brother to go home and tell mom I'll be there in a second, and like continue to finish my game.
Yeah.
I proceed, like, it wasn't maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, mom came marching up and literally dragged me back to the house by my ear. No joke. Like, literally held my ear, pulling me all the way home to the house. And and it was just like, you know, I never did it again.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, that's part of the life lesson, is it's like, you know, I'm responsible for my brother. My parents are responsible for both he and I. When they call, they expect me to come home for whatever the reason is. And they're, you know, like, I'm not ashamed of any of the ways that my parents, disciplined me or raised me. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be the person I am today if it weren't for the way that they did bring me up. You know, so I'm very thankful for that.
100%. And in the moment, like, I mean, I know there's different times where I was like, man, even as a kid, right? Like, knew did wrong, but it was like, I don't want to say hate, because hate is a strong word, but I was like, I very much disliked my dad in different moments throughout the upbringing. Right?
I agree.
But he was, and of course, him and I are very similar. Of course, I became very much like him as I grow up, and I'm a good reflection of really who he is, right? Through like just the teachings and the upbringing. But and I would say probably similar to your upbringing and your parents, and it sounds like mom even just there is a respect that is expected, right? And
Yep.
I think through that respect, the privileges and the abilities to do things, right, are given to you as you age and earn them, right? To where at 8 years old, six for your brother, or, in that range, like I look at, and I love my nephew like to death, and he's great, or my nephews and niece and that. But I'm like, like now that he's older, but at 8 years old, 10 years old, there's no way. Like I would not
Yeah.
feel comfortable putting him out, out doing some of those things. And it all comes down to like how I was brought up and introduced and wasn't introduced in that piece. And my brother's done a phenomenal job with raising his kids. But I also see it with a lot of other kids that are out there. And I know you said that you want to be able to do that with your kids, to where it is definitely a big, I think you look at a lot of kids nowadays. One, I don't think and maybe I could be wrong. Correct me if this is where it's like kind of like your perspective I'd like on it, but I don't feel like kids, I think they're given the opportunities, but I don't think parents are there to, I guess, be with them through that journey to help teach them and give them the ability. And, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but as far as like
No, I
the
get it.
opportunity
I
to
mean,
do it.
I think that the big thing for me, and I'll preface this statement with the fact that it's like I'm not a parent. I don't have any kids, and I want to be a dad at some point. So I have my opinions, and I'm sure that somebody who's a parent is going to hear this and be like, "You don't know what you're talking about," or whatever, and that's fine. I think one of the things that I have done my best to not have kids. I'm 33 now, and have not just jumped at
You still there?
getting in and being a dad early and involve myself because I knew I had a lot of just personal growth and development
Mm-hmm.
to do myself. I'm glad that I've waited because when I look back at myself as a 24-year-old or a 26-year-old or even a 29-year-old 4 years ago, I feel like I'm so far along in my ability to process and interpret things that it's going to make me a better dad. So a lot of
Right.
this, I say all that just to emphasize that I feel like I'm trying to be thoughtful from this perspective, but obviously open to feedback from you as an actual father. But, I think that the big deal is there's a shift of responsibility that I think has happened in the American home, seems to be, and also a shift of the dynamic of where those homes exist. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
preference in the country right now to be within X distance of a metro environment, first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost, which
Yep.
limits your opportunity to experience the world as a kid.
Right.
It means that, from a safety perspective, your parents have to be more hands on and there's less freedom allowed. And I think when you have less independence as a kid, and I say that less controlled independence leads to kids feeling like, um, maybe like they always have to rely on you and they don't figure things out for themselves and develop maybe some
Mm-hmm.
critical thinking skills that otherwise they would. So I think that's one thing. And then I also think that, as an American culture, I think we get so focused on ourselves as adults at times that we don't always prioritize the value of child rearing. Where it's like we're trying to be successful, we're trying to accomplish this goal, we're trying to be better than our parents, we're trying to buy this or do that or go here or go there or pay for this vacation. When I think back to my parents, like they were just trying to have a home and make a living and
Mm-hmm.
provide us a life. Like it
Right.
wasn't until later on in my life as a teenager when there was even considerations of like, let's try to do a family vacation,
Right.
like,
Right.
or
Yeah.
something. It was, versus it seems like there's this expectation amongst adults at this day and age where, there's not as much priority on and maybe this is a selfish way for me to think as not having kids, but, it seems like that the priority is not placed as heavily on the positive value being the kid, and their
Mm-hmm.
upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's wrong, but
No, I mean, there's a handful of things that you hit in there that are, I think, very real. Especially, I would agree in the fact that, I mean, majority, I don't want to say majority, but a good handful of individuals, and of course, with being older now, like I grew up, in the country, right? And you grew up, on the side on a lake, and that I don't like. How far was your closest neighbor from you?
I mean, we were out there, dude. I mean, it was 30 minutes to the nearest like actual like bigger town. We had to go 30
Yep.
minutes to Walmart if we wanted to get to a Walmart or to get groceries. And then I had a neighbor, probably my buddy's grandma was like
Yeah.
500 to 700 yards. I mean, there was buffers pretty much. We were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we lived
Right.
in the country, like out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah, and that's, I mean, we grew up in similar environments to where it's like, our, closest neighbor was, quarter of a mile down the road, or a few hundred yards, whatnot, down the road, and you could see, the next farm over, or, X, Y, and Z down the road. But we would either we'd walk there or we'd take a bike there, and we knew like other farms or communities. To your point, like you knew who was down the street from you in those
Correct.
areas, and it's like, okay, well, they're just going over there, or they're going to run to go do that, or jump on the bike, take the gravel road down, to where it's like, I just knowing where I live now, of course, in more of a suburban area, I got neighbors that are literally 20 yards next to me, right? And
Yeah,
like,
I'm in the same boat. I mean, I have a neighbor right across the way right there.
right. And and this is where it's like, I mean, definitely want to get in the country, but even where we're at now, and I know all our neighbors are really good, right? But there's a sense of like, I'm not going to let Aurora just go run free to the next door neighbor and X, Y, and Z, right? Like, need to make sure that she is good because there is like that protective piece to it. I
Sure.
think going to your point of you have to let them go out and be adventurous in that sense. And it is, and I know not everyone can live in the country or have, tons of acreage or anything of that nature, right? I think the biggest thing that I think, and I think this is something where the day and age when you do become a father and you go down that path, I think you'll be phenomenal at it for the sole fact that you understand these different pieces of just like making them a priority, making that time a priority, because that's something that I have to reflect on every day of like, just, am I being the best dad I can be? Am I bringing her with? Am I helping her experience these different things? Because I think that's one of the biggest things that my dad and mom really did really, really well to kind of just even kind of explain where that comes from. Is my dad is very much like, hey, another notch in the belt, right? He is entrepreneurship based, like, chiropractor by trade, went to school for that, started the farm, did farming, no insurance, like, hey, you either make or break kind of thing, like just go full send, gonna make this happen. To where no matter what he did though, if he just made time to bring his kid out, right? If he went and sat in the tree stand out in the woods, like I remember my youngest period of time knowing like this is maybe only his time to quote unquote get away from the family, as you hear a lot of individuals nowadays to where it's like guys are going out hunting with the guys to get away from the family or do that. It's like, but why? Right?
Yeah.
I understand maybe experiencing in that quiet time. That's nice to just be able to be alone in your own thoughts. Like we all like that. But, I remember being wrapped up in a sleeping bag and I don't remember how old I was, but being, shoved down in the bottom of a tree stand that was made out of pallets, right?
Yep.
In pitch black and not knowing what's around me, but I knew I was safe because dad was there,
Yep.
right? And just hearing the woods come alive and dad, doing everything he could to try and keep me quiet and play any little game, whether he saw something or not, he brought me with, or it was in the tractor, or it was to the office. I think that's the biggest thing that I've come to look at is we're all busy and we're only going to
Yep.
become more busy. But I think with the integration of technology and iPads and all this other stuff is like instead of having the iPad, like a lot of times parents, to your point of like being busy, is like they just give the kids something to distract them to do it so they
Hmm.
can focus on their own thing versus, hey, let's read a book, right? Take the 10, 15 minutes to do that piece and be present with them. And I think that just goes in hand with the outdoor piece of it. Take them
Well,
with.
I think it's the same thing. You know, it's all connected. I mean, everybody likes to kind of like position themselves to where like, oh no, I'm different or my experience is different or my reality is different. But
Right.
we're all in the same bucket. You know, even you can draw comparisons to trying to avoid your own personal development and mental growth by distracting yourself with like tablets and social media.
Yeah.
YouTube, and like it's like, yeah, I love and am guilty of probably more than I should, just vegging out on the couch when I know I have something productive that I need to do. And it's like, and I, and it's like, I get, I'm like, I'm guilty of that too. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are,
We all are.
and it's, and those same developed traits, because they're traits that I think, or habits. I don't even want to call them traits. They're habits that have evolved with
Mhm.
the growth of technology and the access that we have to things to distract us and get that dopamine hit. It's always like looking for the you're defaulting to like the easiest form of um, reward, instead
Mhm.
of like maybe the longer way around the track, or that could be healthier or better for you, and it or better for your situation. And it applies to both personal growth and development and your experience in the outdoors, just the same
Mhm.
way it does. I'm confident in my fiber of my being that it applies to being a dad, even though I'm not one yet.
Yeah. You hit the nail 100% on the head. Like, it is interchangeable with anything and everything across the board. And it is. I mean, it's one of the big reasons why I love hunting so much, because it parallels so much of the personal growth and business side of things. It takes patience, it takes perseverance, it takes like being beat over and over and over and over and over again, right? Until the opportunity presents itself. And that there's so many facets that come along with it. And I think we're always our own worst enemy, right? Of, trying to deviate from the plan. And you could go so deep into so many areas of how much they are similar. But it's no different. Like, if we're talking about the kid piece, like, again, it's allow them to be there for the experiences, to actually see you experiencing it. And I think that's something that, it's something that our generation, and even to the point of just like, hey, what can we do to make a better impact for the next generation? I think it is to remember, like, hey, it's up to us to bring those individuals along and to use the tools that we have via social media and everything, like, to tell that story and to encourage people to do those different things. There's a lot of facets to that. And I want to get into one big piece here, because you have worked with a lot of different individuals who are very influential, different companies, brands, things of that nature. And you've seen a lot of that side, I would assume, of kind of just like higher success in the outdoor industry. But then you have this true passion for the outdoor, like just the community sense of it. When looking at that, because, it's a big reason why even starting the podcast is just like, how do we bring people together? Because you see a lot of just division in the outdoor space based on the camo they wear, the bows they shoot, whatever they believe, and everyone has the ability to do that. What do you think needs to change, or what is your perspective in kind of that topic of like, what can we do to improve what has happened in the past or needs to change kind of moving forward?
Yeah, this is a sensitive one for me personally. I've had a couple. I mean, it's a common conversation amongst my friends and I. People that I feel like I run into in the space, but I get really frustrated. Like you said, there's a lot of industry division,
Yeah.
and I think that just like you said, there's a lot of things in life. I'll take a step back. There's a lot of things in life that parallel the way I think mindful outdoorsmen and women, their mental attitudes and success, whatever the definition of that may be for you in the field, looks like, and being a good husband, a good human being, a good father. Like, there's a lot of parallels there. And there's also a lot of things that we can draw on that are very clear, like negative marks. For example, if you're hunting, and you trying to think of like how I would explain this. If you're focused on the wrong thing, it's going to manifest itself in how effective you are in the woods. So like, let's say you just you just don't believe that your wind direction matters, and you go and set up next to this bedding area where you think a buck's bedding and the wind's blowing right in there. Well, if you do that time and time again and you don't see that deer, you're you're creating a negative. How do I say this? You're doing something that is not a positive thing, and then you're hoping for a positive reaction to what you're accomplishing. And I think
Right.
that to bring that over to the industry side of things and where we are as an outdoor community hunting started, I mean, I don't want to say started. We've always been hunters and gatherers, but I feel like the hunting from a community perspective, modern day, was really built off the back of like this, 70s and 80s sense of joint camaraderie. And I say it from that perspective because that was the window of time where I feel like we were really starting to see the rebounds of a lot of the wild game species across the country. And people could go out and do that, male or female. You had deer camps, you had other hunting cultures, you had people going and bear hunting, you had all these things and activities that were becoming attainable as America continued to grow and scale, and people had more opportunity and wildlife became more accessible. And it really was this thing that even when I got exposed to it in the late 90s and early 2000s, the culture surrounding it was built off of togetherness and the value of like everybody was trying to hunt to harvest something, of course, but it was, you were excited about doing that, but you were also excited about sharing that experience with one another. And there was a very clear line there where it was like, we compete in athletics. Like when I go out and play football, I'm competing to be better than the man across from me. But when we were hunting, nobody was competing. We were all just going to deer camp to be at deer camp together, and we shared information. We were together. And somewhere along the line, our industry realized that if they took this thing, which was, in my opinion, antlers, and they said, hey, everybody is interested in shooting a bigger deer for whatever the reason, and let's prop this thing up on a pedestal and say, this is what you should be idolizing, not what you have been idolizing, which is the community experience. You should be idolizing doing everything you can possibly do to shoot bigger and better deer that score bigger and better. And and to do that, you need this jacket, you need this spray, you need this new thing, you need this thing, and everything associated with hunting became focused on, if you buy this, it will make you better at that. And I think that there's something to be said for having good gear. I don't want to sit here and be like, I'm just out here hunting in jeans and a t-shirt and just like not taking advantage of good equipment, because there is. But I also still really try hard to juggle time with myself in the woods, where I'm trying to push myself to accomplish a goal personally, but not allow that to separate me from the community experiences that made me fall in love with hunting to begin with. And unfortunately, I think it's getting harder and harder, or it has been harder and harder, to have that experience and to remove the competitiveness that has been really ingrained into our culture in the outdoors over the last 30 years in the interest of driving dollars, unfortunately. And it's like, I wish, and it's, it's kind of like the old adage, people go, well, sex sells. Like, attractiveness and attractive things sell. That's a lot of industry plays on that. And the hunting industry plays on, you kill big deer, you kill big elk, you kill big whatever it is. You harvest big things, and it's the sex sells of hunting, But it almost feels like one of those things where it's almost like we're peddling a drug in the industry that is killing us, and we're so addicted to it that we're going to let it kill us before we realize that we're in bad shape, And I say all that, and I want to say, like, I think there's like conversations like this and podcasts specifically have opened the door to getting feedback out. There's a lot of people that are in my friend group, and I'm sure there's a lot of others out there who feel this way, but don't talk about it, because as men, we already struggle with that. Not that there aren't women who hunt and talk about it as well, but in a predominantly male-dominated activity, we're not naturally communicating about our personal thoughts and emotions as is, let alone communicating about, like, when you're supposed to be strong and the world is telling you to be strong and internalize everything and just go on and be bold and proud. It's harder to approach another guy and be like, hey, dude, you know what? Maybe we should go hang out in the woods together.
I was told once a while, like be about a year and a half ago, I had a individual who is, a pretty, I would say a leader in the outdoor space. with one of the companies, and we're just kind of talking with him, kind of like you and I, and he's like, yeah, the old days of the good old days of the outdoor community and all that stuff is all dead and gone. It's going to be interesting to see what happens the next so many years. And man, I was like, oh, yeah, at that point I really didn't know what to say or how to rebuttal on that kind of piece. But I'd have to say today is just like, it's only dead and gone if we let it be dead and
Agreed.
gone. Right.
Well, I think we like to, not to interrupt you, but we really like to point fingers at other people as being like, oh, you're responsible for this. Oh, the anti-hunters are taking this away. Oh, these are people are taking this away. Like in any form, at least at this stage of my life, what I've learned is before you point a finger, you should like you should look at yourself first. How did
Yeah.
you handle the situation, and what are you doing to be better? And then before you address the problem that somebody else may be presenting, you go, okay, I have been introspective. I understand what I brought to that situation. And that's really difficult for people to do. And I think it's really difficult for the hunting community to do. And instead of us oftentimes pointing the finger at ourselves, we like to play the blame game on the easiest one are non-hunters in the anti-hunting community, but more often than not, people are pointing fingers at other hunters in the hunting community first.
Exactly.
Like because of the fact that it's become this competitive thing, and we've devalued camaraderie, and instead we've added value surrounding what people seem to want is this carryover from the fantasies of the 90s and the early thousands of like, I want people to come over and see this giant wall of mounts all over my house and like just giant deer everywhere. And it's like, it's cool. I respect that. And I appreciate people who are good enough outdoorsmen to accomplish that. But that needs to be like communicated alongside the fact that that's not why we hunt. And if our goal is to protect this opportunity and the heritage, because we are very much so the minority of voters.
Oh yeah.
And in a democratic society, we vote on things. And if we're sitting here dealing with votes, it's like to the outside community, to the other people who have the ability to influence what we do and love. If all we do is focus on, or if all we're publishing is the focus on harvest and not the focus on why we do it, then it carries no weight when somebody calls us out on it and we go, no, you don't understand. We love it because of this, this, and this. And they're like, well, show me that.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's that piece. I appreciate you just even elaborating further on it, because there is that. And this is where I think like there's a lot of ego inside of the hunting space, especially, I mean, predominantly there's a lot of men within it, and it's like bigger is better in all those different areas. And I think it needs to be known that if someone is really working on just proper management and they want to harvest a big buck, awesome, right? Go for that. Do that. But it does not diminish the value of the individual who's just out there to hunt for meat, right?
Exactly.
And do what they want to be able to go through and do. And they might have harvested, a basket rack, 6-point, spike, whatever it is. Their freezer is full. They have accomplished their goal in what they're doing, right? And utilizing the public land that all of us own, all of us share, right? To where it's like in that like aspect of it is we can't hate each other for what we're ultimately working to achieve and try and do. And if we do, it's just like, I look at it as like two divorced parents, right? In the worst scenario of like you're trying to make the child choose, when the reality is of if anyone's gone through that piece and both of them are hating on each other, like that child is essentially the anti-hunter, or the individuals who admit I wouldn't even say they're anti-hunters. They just don't know any better, but they just see this group of people that can't even seem to get along themselves, right? And all they're doing is chasing this or poking fingers here. How are we supposed to get more individuals involved in what we are doing if they think all we're trying to do is chase a rack, right? To your point, like the community is the most powerful piece. So.
And it's not saying, I want to be very clear, because I'm sure that there's people out there that are going to listen to this and be like, oh, you I know that I've heard you on other podcasts and you talk about hunting big deer, or you have an interest, or you have a deer that's your target deer every year. 100% agree and think that, like, just like you said, it's a juggling match. It's like, it's okay for you to want to go and pursue a big deer, to set more goals for yourself, to be
Mm-hmm.
interested in harvesting something. I certainly have goals that are based on challenging myself in the outdoors, which I think is important.
Right.
But the biggest component to that is, just like you said, is not diminishing other people's experiences and value surrounding their experience in the outdoors and the way they want to enjoy it themselves, because it
Mm-hmm.
differs from yours, or maybe, they didn't shoot this caliber deer or that. And also, when you're, if you think about it from a new hunter perspective, if our interest is expanding hunting and outdoor opportunity, whether you be hunting, fishing, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is new and coming in, it's like you have to let them get to where you are at their own pace. Like,
Right.
it's when I started, I was so fired up to shoot the first doe that I harvested at like 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah.
And I was
Oh,
not even thinking about
yeah.
harvesting a buck, because it wasn't about that. It was just about me and dad and seeing a deer or being in the woods when a buck was around, whether we got a
Right.
shot or not. And then it was this huge kumbaya around, I harvested my first deer, and it was this whole thing. There was no discussion around how big or small it was, or whether it was a doe or a buck, or what way I should be hunting or what gear I should be using. It's just about go out, have success and failure at your own pace, try to put meat in your freezer for your own well-being, and connect with the outdoor world in a way that makes you a better human and a better individual. And not necessarily just like, you don't start off, running an Olympic sprint. It's
Right.
like, it doesn't work like that. You build up to it. And when we talk to new hunters, it's like, it's hard. I hear a lot of new hunters are frustrated because they're like, man, I don't know where to start. It's like, there's
Right.
so few of the environments we grew up in, I feel like now,
Yeah.
that, man, I feel for those folks.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start? Especially if you're a late onset, if you're somebody that's starting as an 18-year-old or later, as
Yep.
an adult, like, I mean, you can go find groups, but you could go join a nonprofit or get involved with somebody. But even then, the competitiveness is so deep in our space. It's so hard for me to wrap my mind around, like, them finding authenticity in or people who are really willing to. I don't know. Maybe that's the pessimist in me that's coming out now, and maybe
Well,
I need to be a
no,
little more hopeful, but
I don't think you're wrong in any way. I think it's twofold, right? Because I think about this just even with working at First Form and working with a lot of people who don't hunt, right? It's kind of a personal goal of mine. Like, I want to give everyone in that building the opportunity to go out and do it if they would like to, right? Or
yep.
have that. I only have so many days, right, and so much time, so it's like it's not like, oh, I can just bring everyone, right? But hopefully, I think it's multiple things. One, through the content that those of us who are in the outdoor space, through our content and what we put out, right? If we are choosing to do that, not that anyone and everyone should go out and do it, it's whether you want to share or not. But those who are, share the journey, tell the stories. I think there's a lot of individuals out there in the content kind of world that do a phenomenal job with it. There's
Agree.
other individuals who, again, just show the big bucks and all that stuff, which is, again, that's what they choose to do. There's nothing wrong
Yep.
with it, right? But it's
Agree.
finding, like, mentorship isn't just, hey, we got to meet up today for an hour, me and you in person. It's no different than mentorship in personal development. Read a book, be able to follow someone on social media, watch the YouTube channels, dig deeper into those things and connect with those kind of people, right? And people, I think, would be very surprised and shocked, if they're new to this and if you're listening to the podcast, like those individuals that maybe you follow, like just asking simple questions, right?
Yep.
In the curious mindset, like the people who do this stuff, like if they truly have a great drive and passion for the outdoor space and the hunting side of things and just the heritage piece that comes along with that, they want to help. You
Yeah.
send me a DM. Yeah. What can I do? Where can I point you in a direction?
And
Right.
I look at it a lot like I look at voting, in the sense of, like, the way that I talk to guys about it is, it's like I'm not saying that one way or the other is right or wrong, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't at least vote, you don't have a voice in the conversation,
No.
So when it comes to this kind of a thing, it's like, I don't care if you go out and shoot only big deer, or if you go out and just meat hunt. Do whatever makes you happy. I support
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, because I
Mm-hmm.
do whatever I want to do. I have my own personal interests and goals, but
Mm-hmm.
do your best to articulate when you are presenting that to the world. If if you decide like, hey, I'm going to publish this on social media, explain like, if you're going to, at that point, in a weird way, not only do you represent yourself, but you also represent the entire hunting community that has brought you into this point of your life. Whether you are completely self-taught or whether you've taken nuggets from certain people on YouTube, you're a reflection of everybody. And I think I'm not saying that we as hunters should have to walk around like we're on eggshells, but I was raised, my dad and mom were very adamant about, when you walk up and you meet somebody, it's yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am. You put your best foot forward, you shake somebody's hand, you try to bring an air of positivity and good communication when you enter a room. I think that it's our responsibility as outdoorsmen and women to do the exact same thing when we decide to showcase what the reward is at the end of a long journey of difficult hunting. And it's like, if that is a grip and grin for you, I respect that. But make sure that the community knows, make sure that the world understands, like, you're not just in this, you're not just involved for this superficial capitalistic direction that we've all been culturally built into, and that you're doing this and showcasing this because you love it. Whether that means, in whatever way that is, for everybody, it's different. It could be that you love the pursuit of hunting giant deer. It could be that you love the hunt camp feeling and you shared that with your brothers and sisters. Whatever it is, just express why you love that moment with you and that deer, not just the moment of you getting to look at the inches of antler in your hand.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, like, you ever meet someone, I'm sure, like, I could go through and, probably if you had, deer racks inside of your room or whatnot, like, I could be like, man, that's a great buck. Awesome buck. Cool. Yes, it's big, but I'm sure there's a story behind that. And that's what makes it special.
We've got a whole handful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I got ones over here. I mean, I could turn a little bit. I don't know if it'll even show the screen off to the side there or not, but the big piece to it, I guess I'm trying to turn my computer, my camera's up here. Wow, rookie. I can't even do that. Yeah, but I have like my first little, I say little buck, but to me, dude, you would have thought this thing was a 300-inch whitetail the way I was running up and down trails. And it's just a little, a 5-point sticker kind of thing, but there was so much of a journey and story behind it. And then I have, other bucks and whitetails. Every single one of them has a story, right? And they were target bucks. But in the beginning, the target was just to get out there, right? And I wanted to hit on one thing, and I don't mean to kind of cut in on you.
No, you're good.
But you made a really good point a little bit ago of, it just triggered me as like, we hunters and outdoorsmen, and I would one, have anyone and everyone who's ultimately listening to this, if you love to hunt, maybe you've never hunted before. If you've hunted before, just ask, like, how did you get involved? What was the story that had to be told or, experienced? Like, what experience did you have that got you hooked into all this? I guarantee you it wasn't the big buck. That little 8-point that you had out in front of you, or 6-point, that was your monster at the time. Or maybe it was the doe, right? Or maybe you didn't even see anything, right? But there was an experience that made you go out the next day, right? And it, and for those who haven't done this, like, know that some people might not be very good at telling that story, as there's better storytellers than not. So it's like, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's finding people around you, right, who do this, and maybe asking them to go with on that hunt, right? Doing those things. Because I'm a firm believer of, like, if you don't ask, you'll never receive, right? Like, you have to be curious in that way. But you also have to look at it in a sense of, like, and this is just kind of the way I was brought up. Like, my dad even said it when, I moved down here back when Dad actually lived in Missouri when he went to school for chiropractic. And he would literally knock on doors and ask guys, like, he'd hunt public land, but he'd also go out and be like, hey, can I clean up your backyard, or what can I do around the farm to earn an ability to go out and hunt, this back little acreage of land you have, and earn what you are doing, right? So maybe you're someone who wants to go on a hunt, like, ask to go with and be like, hey, I mean, I even do this, like, guys who have, like, they have a sheep hunt. I know it's like a year, a long journey, but looking at, like, I just look at, man, if one of my buddies draws a moose tag or does X, Y, and Z, I'm just like, how can I be a freaking pack mule and be a part of that experience? Because that, to your point earlier in this, is just, there is so much magic that happens through this that makes people want to go back year and year and year and year again without even getting something.
Yep.
But it always comes back to the people that you're surrounding yourself with that
Yep.
tie that together.
Yeah, and I hold a lot of that to be like, you know, when as the hunting industry evolved, we kind of found ourselves in this position of like hunting media was, I think, is responsible for a lot of that, and it's gotten a lot better. I think in the way we're telling stories as a community because of the advent of YouTube and people's interest in being flexible and creative versus the monopolization that hunting TV had on the industry for a long time.
Yep.
But the reality was, for the most effective way to pack a hunt into a thing was in a, you know, 15 to 20 minute TV episode, you know, that was, you know, for all intents and purposes, from hunter in tree stand to dead deer on the ground. And that same framework existed for a long period of time, where it was all about how many kills can you pack into this window of time on a VHS tape? You know, how many, what can we pack into this Saturday morning, you know, or, you know, whatever hunting TV show. And like I said, I don't hold anything against those guys, because they're a product of the world, and they were entrepreneurs and they loved hunting. It's just that the creative side of things at that time manifested itself in a way that I think looking back on it now, hindsight's always 2020, may not have been the most beneficial for us as a community, because it didn't show why we love hunting the way that it is. You know, I think to what we were talking about is, you know, like those deer behind you on the wall, or any of the deer that I have here in my office, they all have a story, and it starts like way beyond me just getting into the tree. I'm not saying that, like you said, you don't have to be a perfect and an incredible storyteller, or have to write out some long drawn out thing about, you know, this emotional experience, or cry over every buck that you happen to harvest and be on the ground. But just understand the impact of what you put out into the world, and the story that you do choose to tell, and, you know, be able to grow from that, and, you know, from that experience, and hold yourself accountable, you know. Like we should hold ourselves accountable. And I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about us as a community.
No, but I would agree.
You know?
Like, it is like, and this is what's kind of cool with it. And I think about personal development, your own physical health and well-being, like all of these things like build on each other. Like, honestly, it's a personal respect for what you do, what you have, the abilities, and like just the opportunities that are, you know, at your fingertips. I think, you know, and it comes with the instant gratification of just today's society, in that sense of like, it doesn't, and I think that's something that is so attractive to me for the outdoor space, is like, it is not an instant gratification.
Agreed.
It is something that is earned, no different than physical health, like your overall health and well-being, and having a good like build or physique. Like, it takes time, and I think that's where a lot of people struggle with it, and knowing that this does not happen overnight, right? And it's finding a love and a passion for the journey more so than just the finish line.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's so well said. That is exactly what I think what we're talking about, is the value is in the journey, not the finish line. Like, that is exactly like yes, you want to stand there and celebrate and have that beer at the finish line. But at the same time, you also, the reason that you come back, just like you said earlier, is because of like what it took to get to that moment. My dad always used to say the work starts when you pull the trigger.
100%. That's, again, my dad's like, you pull one down, all fun and games until you pull one down. Literally the same thing, but wrapped in a different, you know, different wrapping paper. It's the struggle, right? I think that's, you know, I had a kid, and we do workouts at work, right? Just like community ones, team ones. And I had this kid, it was his first workout. And we had 3 15-minute AMRAPs back to back, and it was a hell of a workout for him to come into for his first workout ever. And we were about halfway through the second part of this workout, and this kid, like, he's just like, he's dying a little bit, and he's going through. There's a lot of mental pieces that are going on inside of his head. And there's a lot, I can tell when you look in someone's face, like, why are we doing this? Right. And he literally asked me, he's like, do you get paid to do this? And it was just like automatic reaction without a beat was like, yeah, we get paid to do this. like in the aspect of like you are paying yourself, right? And this like this grind, like this moment and what made me smile in that time, because I just started laughing while I was like running on this air runner. It's like if he sticks it out, right? If he stays around and sticks through it, and it's a big reason why we do the workouts, because you learn a lot about people in what they do in these, and when you struggle and you see how people hold each other accountable, how they support one another. And that's our one rule is like, you just don't quit. Doesn't matter how long
Yeah,
it takes, just don't quit. But if he sticks it out, he will never forget that workout. He'll never
exactly.
forget that moment, the thoughts, and that's something to build on to where
Yep.
like
Oh man,
there.
you're hitting such a. I'm so fired up about this topic because I talk to so few people who believe in this mentality when it comes to personal fitness and well-being. And I'm not saying that like I think in our health and wellness world, in our fitness world, you
Mhm,
have the people who are adamant gym goers and focused on their fitness, and then you have those who kind of are casual or not involved at all. And a
mhm,
lot of times, like, there's this one side that the side that's involved wants to bring the side that's not involved into the gym and into fitness. And they
mhm,
try to do it in this real delicate way. And
mhm.
I'm completely the opposite. It's like, I want you to understand very clearly what you're getting yourself into before you officially commit to this workout. But I want to push you to understand. I want to push you for me to be able to understand what your character is, but also for you to be able to understand that you can do this. And if you do a really hard lift, not necessarily not pushing somebody to injure themselves, but obviously if you
No.
do a really hard lift or a really hard workout, yeah, it may suck for a couple of days while you get over that soreness and kind of adapt to it. But you have you have leapt in to like accomplishing something that you didn't think you had the ability to do, and it puts you at a pace where you can really like you don't have to be afraid of doing something at that level, or jumping in or pushing yourself to work harder, or I don't know, it just I think it's super important. I think it's super important for people to like really challenge themselves, especially when they don't feel like they can. They're like, "Oh no, I could never do a workout like that. I could never do it." Well, you can.
No,
You
you can.
probably can,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
How many
you just
people
need
say,
somebody.
go ahead.
I was going to say, you just need somebody to do it with you. And, my rule has always been, whether I was training a buddy or lifting or doing anything was it's going to suck, but I'll do it with you.
Hmm.
Like, I'm going to be doing it with you.
It applies to everything. You hear it all the time in the fitness world. It's like, well, I'm not a bodybuilder. Well, I'm not a runner. Well, I'm not a CrossFitter. Well, I'm not this. Well, I'm not that. Well, you will never be that if you never even give it a shot, if you never even try, if you don't ever go. And it's, it even goes back like me growing up, like I was dyslexic. I mean, I am dyslexic, right? So I haven't cured that piece, but in that, just even with like reading and writing, it would take, Tina would go through and write a paper in college. I'm pretty sure they accepted me into college because they needed a minority and I was one of them. But it would take it. She'd write a paper in an afternoon. It'd take me 2 to 3 days after going through edits, and it would be mind numbing. And I hated every single second of it. For the longest time, I would tell myself, oh, I'm not a good reader. I'm not a good writer. I'm not this. I'm not that. All the way back and forth. And it honestly wasn't until I went through and came down to first form and I'd done 75 hard. In my first round of 75 hard, I read more books in one round of that than I did my entire life leading up to that because I made myself do it. But it would take me an hour to read 10 pages. I mean, 30 years old, right?
Hmm.
Like it'd take me a minute, and I'm not a fast reader by any means. I'm a hell of a lot faster than I used to be. But it took one of my good friends, an individual who ultimately is a leader and mentor at headquarters, to literally, I don't want to say scream at me, but I went through as like I was struggling in what I was ultimately doing. And I just like, man, I'm just not a good reader. He's like, you will never be a good fucking reader if you keep telling yourself that,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And
it's go ahead. Excuse me.
no, I was just gonna say, and but that piece, it took that, and honestly, in that moment, I was like, I mean, in the nicest way possible, I was like, well, screw you, dude. Like you don't know me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that sat with me, and it was that hard conversation, that hard truth that I ultimately needed to hear. To where it's like, I will never call myself a bad reader ever again. I won't call myself a slow reader. Like I'm just Jake, and this is the pace that I
Yep.
read at. I'm a
Well,
hell of
it's
a
it's
lot better than I
just
was in the past.
I think
Go
It's
ahead.
just a matter of being uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Like it's just putting yourself, nobody wants to feel like they're not capable of doing something. But even in the fitness side of things, like if you use like working out in the, like we've both trained for I feel like a pretty large percentage of our life. And it's like if you approach the gym and you go, well, I'll work up to the level of
Hmm.
difficulty of maybe that lift or that workout. I'm not saying that you should go into the gym and just do 100% of your max every single time. But
Yeah.
like let's say it's the intensity of your workout.
Yeah.
That's a better word for it, right? So you if you look at it and you go, I'll work up to that level of fitness intensity. It's like, well, if you spend 3 weeks doing 50% of that level of intensity, it's going to suck just as much when
Hmm.
you do get to that point 3 or 4 weeks from now to convince yourself to do a lift or a workout at that intensity as
Hmm.
it would have if you had just done it on day one.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that there isn't a time and a place for stretching or being responsible with your wellness, but just give it your best. And that best may be 60% of your total capability. It may be 70%, but push yourself.
Hmm.
Genuinely push yourself to whatever the bounds. Like growth doesn't happen where you're not in some level of discomfort. So there's a bunch of famous lifters that I'm familiar with that like they would start counting when the lift started hurting.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
that's
Oh, yeah.
it's there's a whole process to going until failure
Right.
to like throw confusion into your muscle and your workout routine, as opposed to being like, well, I could go into this and do 4 sets of 10,
Mhm.
or I could do 10 reps might be easy at whatever I'm doing. And it's like if I go into the gym and I only ever do what I'm already capable of, I'm never going to get to the point of doing something that I'm currently not capable of doing. And the only
Mhm.
time you get there is by being at that discomfort that's pushed past your current level of comfort. If that's, gosh, that was a mouthful, but hopefully that makes
No,
sense.
it makes 100%. I mean, 100% makes sense. That, I mean, here's the deal. If you do 100 burpees today, it's going to suck.
Yep.
Well, if you do 100 burpees, and if you say you do 100 burpees every single day for the next month, a month from now, it'll still suck the same, but I can guarantee you'll be faster at it. You'll be better at it. Like, you probably won't be afraid of it after doing it 100 days in a row.
Yep.
I think that's like that piece, like we always talked about back, like the CrossFit gym is like CrossFit doesn't get any easier, you just get better. Like you're always progressing. That's, I think it is, it's the thing that is so awesome about like just fitness in general, whether it's CrossFit, any of this stuff. Like it's kind of like, I mean, I see a bunch of people doing the high rocks thing and everything now, to where it's like it makes me excited because there's a lot of people who maybe have never gotten in, but they found their community. They're
Yep.
out going and doing things they never thought they did. They run one race and it probably sucked, but they're
Yep.
going to run more and they're going to get better, right?
Well, it's just such a testament to just like I see, like I'll listen to, like I don't know if you ever listen to like Jubilee on YouTube. It's like they have like these debates between different people from different backgrounds and pillars and interests in life. Like sometimes it's political, sometimes it's health and wellness, sometimes it's religious. It could be anything, but they basically make them
Really?
have a reasonable discourse to discuss opinions. And one of the things on one of the fitness ones was, people who were saying like, "Oh, I'm working out. I've been going to the gym, but I'm not seeing improvement." And it's like you can go to the gym and not push yourself. You can
Yeah.
do things in life. You can go hunt and not push yourself. And you can go do things and then come back to the people that are in your corner or come back to somebody else and be like, "Man, I've been doing this for this amount of time and I'm not losing weight. I'm not finding deer. I'm not doing this." And it's like, are you just going to go, or are you going to make yourself better? Like, are you going to
Hmm.
grow? Like, and it's like,
Hmm.
you have to drive yourself. Like, it's like you can't, there is no growth in that space. And, kind of bring it back to like the hunting side of things, I think is, there's when your interest is in being successful in the harvest, if your mind is in the right place, I think, and you're involved in your hunting community, there's always going to be success there. The camaraderie is the success. But on the other side of that coin, if you're looking at yourself and saying, okay, my family, my home life, my community, my camaraderie, I have that piece of the pillar. Now, how do I get better in the woods? Well, it's not going to
Hmm.
be just going out and sitting in any old tree. You have to be thoughtful about your approach to harvesting a white-tailed deer,
Right.
especially if you are interested in harvesting one at an upper echelon. Oh, did I lose you?
Oh, it cut out
Can you
for
hear
a
me?
second, but you're good. Yep. Everything looks good.
Quick intermission.
Yeah. Quick. We're back.
But we're back. But you have to be thoughtful about that. And it's the same thing with fitness. It's the same thing with athletics. It's the same thing about your growth in personal life and in your relationships and within your own family is like intentional activity in whatever that space is, at least at this stage of my life, the only way that I've found to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which discussion I was having, whether it was with a buddy or something, but I was like, there's two things about life that I try to do. I focus on them with hunting and with wellness and athletics. They've been exactly the same. And now as I'm trying to be better as a personal human in my relationship and family life, it's being like putting yourself in uncomfortable scenarios and being intentional. If you can have those two things and you look at each thing in your life and you go like,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going into the woods, if I'm going to go try to find a big deer, well, he's probably somewhere where I'm going to have to be uncomfortable to get to him because
Right.
nobody else wants to be there. That's why he's there. So you got to be uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form. Not that you can't get lucky, but you're probably going to have to be uncomfortable. And you're going to have to be intentional about your approach and how you go about the process of harvesting that deer. Just like if you're in the gym, you got to push yourself to a position of discomfort to be able and go in there with an intentional interest in being better to get the growth that you're interested in getting, whatever that may be.
No, and it goes right in line with, hey, you're not going to get a six pack day one you walk into the gym, right? Like in the woods, the whole point, like the best victory of starting your fitness journey is just get into the gym. Just go do the workout, right? To where same in the outdoor side of it, and like the hunting side is just go out hunting, like put it together and get out there in the woods.
Well, and what's funny is most people are already they just need to expand their thought process over to allowing that expectation to be the reality, whether it be in the gym or in hunting. Because it's like if you look at your work, like your job, most jobs you show up to, their expectation is that there's usually a 3 to 6 month ramp up period where you're building a relationship in the organization, you're figuring stuff out, you're learning how to pitch your thing, you're figuring out where everything is at. You got to go through that growth phase to be at your top level of performance within that organization. And most bosses and companies understand that. They're like, okay, hey, we're not saying that you can't perform or can't help, but like this person's new. There's a position to that. And people already have their mind wrapped around that with their work and their job. Because when they go to a new job, they're like, hey, I'm still figuring this out. Bear with me, I'm figuring it out. But then they don't want to always carry that over to the gym or to hunting. There's this instant gratification expectation. It's like, no, you got to look for developments on 3 to 6 month timelines of time spent, whether it's in the woods, in the gym, in other aspects of your life. Like things don't happen overnight. They happen over long periods of time with intentional, thoughtful activity.
And that's the piece I would say is like it's the intent behind it, because there's definitely, if it takes 3 to 6 months for someone to get good at their position or their job or find that comfortable point, like some people are better than others in making that adjustment or that movement in there. No different than someone going into the woods, right? Making that adjustment in there. But it's how do you approach like what you're getting into? Like, is your intent in the right place in your job, in that space, in the woods, in the gym? Like that, I think is something that just, it's so easy because there's a lot of people in the job side of things too that'll go in and be like, well, I'm new, I'll just coast, right? Get into it. So it's like, what and why are you doing the things that you ultimately do? And like, it's important to find a passion in what you do within your job, right? Same thing within the hunting side. Like, and that's where I think too, again, like, it gets into the hunting of like the division that can be created there is, well, you know what? Jacob might like to hunt a different way than I do, right? And maybe use different things or X, Y, and Z. But it's like you got to be able to like learn from those individuals who are in front of you, no different than on the job, right? And your leads and everything there, the people you follow, like learn from them, but also I think have the entrepreneur spec, right? The idea like be creative enough to learn that way, but also like figure out what your path is in it, right?
That's exactly. I was just about to say, like, be honest with your expectations about what you're looking to get out of it. And it's like if your interest in that job is to go in and crush it from 9 to 5 and just be that role and then, not scale, well, then just be honest with those expectations. If you want to show up and just be like, hey, I want to shoot a couple does a year, fill the freezer. I want, then, and the same thing with the gym. If you just want to go in, get your cardiovascular system moving, get your blood pumping, breathe a little bit, then be honest with yourself about what you're going to get out of what you're putting into that thing. There's nothing wrong with making that choice. Just like I tell guys all the time, my whole rule in life is like, I don't care what you choose to hunt or shoot, but if all you ever do is shoot spikes and forkers and small bucks, I don't want to hear you bitching about not ever shooting a big deer,
or about the individual who does,
who does,
who did take that time to do that.
Exactly. Because it's like, if you wanted to, you could, but you choose not to. Just live with the choices you make and don't chastise other people for making choices that are, that are more difficult or maybe push themselves in a different way than you're choosing to do. And if you do choose to go down that road and you go, hey man, I'm tired of harvesting just does every year. I really want to go try to find a big deer. I'm tired of, being at the weight that I'm at in the gym. Push yourself, find a new, go beyond those existing expectations that you have for yourself and say, how do I get there? And then be intentional and thoughtful and grow. And the same way you would in your job. If you were tired of working in a sales job for 5 straight years, you'd go, you know what? How do I be a VP? What do I got to do to be a manager? What do I got to do to be this? And you ask questions, right. And, maybe your boss is like, hey, the last guy that did exactly what you're talking about, stayed every day for 2 extra hours and learned this. And then we were able to put him in that role. It's like, all right, well, now you got a path. You have a plan, right. So it's so many things in life, man. They're all interconnected around those 2 things is just your intent and your interest or your willingness to endure discomfort.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something that I ultimately I've enjoyed, like even with what you and Cody have put together and built out, just with the community that I found, within like the Lone Wolf custom gear side of things, and what you guys have with the Mobile Hunter Roadshow, right? Was going down there. Like, and you talk about you've hit on a handful of things I've heard you even talk about in there, and you bring so much of that personal, raw realness into the talks you have with the guys that are there. It's cool to see that community. Right. And I could tell like there's a reason that, the guys are who do come there or have come back, like they see that Mobile Hunter Roadshow, I would assume probably has a little bit of their deer camp, because maybe they don't have some of those individuals around them that they've connected with you guys, but then also through that found other friends and relationships and conversations that have built out through that event as a whole. Which I think is super, super cool, is to where it's like, all right, go out and connect with more and more of these people, at least from individuals that I talked with when I was at the event, to just kind of see that grow. And it's not a show. Like, it's not this huge, like, rah, rah, rah kind of thing. It's just guys and girls and kids just coming in, learning more about just the mobile hunting side of things, to where it's like, hey, you got to get out there and like have your boots on the ground. And it's just zero BS, giving them the simplest pieces to it to some of the most advanced, in essentially a day. So
yeah, and I mean, when Cody first came up with that idea for the roadshow, he was literally it was kind of right around the pandemic, and he was just going to go jump and just like drive his van around the country and just meet random people with his gear.
That's Cody in a nutshell. I could see him like pulled up, and every Walmart parking lot across the United States were holding a Mobile Hunter Roadshow.
Yeah. It was he was just like, and he loves that dynamic of just like he'll tell you like he loves just the hangout part of talking about gear and deer hunting. Like, he doesn't really like, and the roadshow is pretty, I mean, we have to structure it a little bit to keep things organized, but he prefers 100%. The even less formal, because he's way more comfortable in that environment. And when he was telling me about that idea to just go drive around and introduce people to product, I was like, hey man, why don't we combine this with some level of community and education and try to like invest into the people that are investing into not just the Lone Wolf brand, but into brands like Onyx and Hoyt and all these other companies, because they're passionate about the activity. And I think the roadshow is this combination of the community like having a venue to share knowledge. Like
Hmm.
I learn things from attendees every single year, just as much
Right.
as I hope that I can convey things as a speaker. So you have that where it's this open forum position of shared knowledge and growth, but you also just have this place where everybody can get together and be a community member. And yeah, there's brands that support it and sponsor it to help bring it to life and make it like, we need gas money more or less, that
Yeah.
kind of a thing to be able to make it
100%.
viable. But
Yeah.
but it at its core, the interest is in providing people an opportunity to have that level of community and camaraderie and togetherness and have fun and
Yep.
learn from one another and from the people that were able to get to come there and talk, whether that be on, life, love, the pursuit of happiness, or deer hunting,
Yep.
so it's been really cool to see it ebb and flow and grow. And, this will be our 5th year. I think Cody
Hmm.
and I were just talking about that 5th year of road shows this year. So
That's awesome.
we're pretty fired up
Yeah. Hell
to,
yeah.
and we're making some changes, but we're trying to just always build on that like what we want as a core. What are we providing? How are we doing a good job building our community and providing
Yep.
value to those that are around us?
I think that's, I mean, it's built off of what like your guys's, really all of your guys's experiences, right? And then even the other guys who are there, you could tell like the group, whether it's the speakers and everything there is like, they might all hunt different ways. They might use different stands. They might have different gear that they run, right? They might have different tactics they hunt with, but there's definitely that campfire vibe, right? Of like all these
Mm-hmm.
dudes grew up, loving, and they all have one thing in common, and that is that they love hunting. They love being out there with good people who share the same values, right? In all facets of the outdoor space. And I think that's something that just, again, it's that energy that's put off to everyone else to where it's like, I've talked to guys who've come to that, literally traveled all the way up from Florida and across the country that, just behind the scenes stuff that they talk about is like, man, I've been to a lot of expos, I've been to a lot of shows. I've never been to something like this to where has that intimate tie and that connection. So that is like, you guys are doing really, really good things. And it's just cool to be able to see it come from a raw place. So, yep.
It comes from a place of like Cody and I both being passionate about, I think, the way that we have been involved in different parts of our lives. And,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take the original concept of this was Cody's, and I've been lucky enough to kind of evolve it with him and
Yeah.
mind mold it into what it is today. I think that it draws a lot from like our athletic interests. And I think you see
Yeah.
that in the athletic community a lot. And, in First Form and the events that you guys do, the
Yep.
camaraderie that's centered around like everybody going through things challenging together. And, we're just bringing that same feeling of like, hey, let's go through something together. Let's all acknowledge that we're here to grow as outdoorsmen, as deer hunters,
Mm-hmm.
as woodsmen, and share things, learn from one another. Whether you're there and you're a new hunter, you've been interested in 10 years and you just want to listen and, then add some feedback and grow. Like it's just this, it's its own living, breathing
Yeah.
entity and creature in and of itself, just like the athletic world, and having a team that you live on and die on, and being able to rely on the people next to you. It's nice to feel like you belong to a group of people that have that like mind and all believe in that same structure and are willing to challenge themselves to accomplish a certain goal, whatever that may be, in a
Well,
non-competitive, non-ruthless way.
right. Well, and it's cool you're able to do that though with having some sort of competitiveness in there, especially when you guys have like, I mean, you put together, the relay, right? And
Yep.
shooting, you tie physical fitness into it. And it is such a cool atmosphere to where I would put money on the fact, and this goes right back to what we talked about, like the struggle, right? Like the story is in the struggle. And I'm sure there's guys that leave that event and they're just like, oh man, that relay, or oh, we should have won it, or X, Y, and Z. Like there's that community battle back and forth that's built up. Some of these guys probably haven't even worked out for, God knows how long, right?
Yep.
And them to go in and do that, I think there's a good little wake up call that comes along with that.
Yep.
But also, like, no matter, I don't care who you are or where you come from, like, everyone has a little bit of a competitive spirit in them. Sometimes it just has to be helped, like, flourish or be opened up a little bit. So,
Yeah, and maybe the way I said it was a little bit, because you're right, there is a competitive component to it, but it's the type of competition that I think is healthy competition, in the sense that
mhm.
we have competitive events at the road show, but those
Yeah.
competitive events are finished with everybody like hugging and being stoked together, regardless of which team you're on. And that's the same, that's the feeling that we hope perpetuates itself into the woods. You know, if I show up to a public land parking lot and there's two other guys going into the same piece of woods that I'm, you know, going into, and we're chasing the same buck, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not trying to be better than they are that day. But if one of them happens to harvest it, I'm not going to not be stoked for him when I get back to the truck, or I'm not going to not help him drag it out. If he sees me there, it's like, hey man, I shot this big 10 point, you know, I'm so fired up. I'm not going to be like, oh dude, I've been hunting that deer for 2 years. I can't believe you just, you know, instead it's like, oh dude, I can't believe, like, I've been hunting that deer for 2 years. I can't believe you got, like, you know, you're saying the same thing and experiencing it with them in two totally different ways. And it's like, there's healthy competition, and then there's competition that puts you on an island and puts outdoorsmen on islands, you know, and it's like, we need that team environment.
Yeah,
you know,
dude, I had an experience like that, would have been 2 years ago, really, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, out where I was hunting public land out here, pulled up to that parking lot, right, to the conservation area. Other truck was right there, and dude, you know, in the dark of the dawn, he's getting ready, and I just, you know, walked up to him, and you could tell that he was like almost nervous that I even came over by the truck, kind of thing. Like, it was just a weird, like, you could sense like this energy kind of piece. And it's like, hey man, what's your name? If I remember correctly, it was Chris. It's like, oh, it's Chris. It's like, hey, it's like, I'm Jake. Like, where are you going? Like, you know, in the sense, like, I don't want to go where you're ultimately going. It's like, I've hunted here. He's like, you know, have you been hunting out here? And I just asking him, kind of get an idea of like what direction you're going. I don't want to mess up your hunt. Like, I was looking at it as like, I hope you have a great hunt. And he's like, honestly, like, this is my first time hunting out here. I just did a little bit of e-scouting. And I was like, dude, it's like, where are you looking at going? And he was going really almost over by where I was going, right? In a sense, or where I had like stand and everything kind of set up. And he's like, and I just told him, I was like, dude, go over there, honestly. And I just told him like my kind of game plan in it. I'm not saying anyone has to do that. I was like, I'll just pack up in. I had my setup and everything on me. I'm like, I can go back in. I'm like, you go over there. If you get something, you let me know. Leave a note on my truck. Like, here's my number. Like, I'll pack it out. Like, it was really, really cool to where it's like, if I would have been very negative or condescending in some way, it was his first time out hunting in that spot. So it could have ruined it. So.
Yeah. And people have a tendency, I think, to think that like having, you know, like when you show up to the parking lot or you show up to public land, it's like they look at everybody else as somebody that's going to try to beat them to the deer. And it's like, you know, like this year was a prime example for me in Illinois of like why I think this mentality is important. It's like I was out there for 10 days, busting my butt, bad weather, just struggling. But everybody was. There were a bunch of guys on the public around me. And I was just like, constantly approaching them and talking to them, being like, hey man, where are you hunting? What are you doing? I don't want to mess you up. And we're all sharing and talking. And like, I've still got one sitting in my truck right now. Like, first of all, I've met over the last like 4 or 5 years going to the Midwest. I have a number of different friends that have become either just general acquaintances where we keep in touch each fall, or, you know, we hunt the same pieces of ground, that have come from those parking lot meetups, and we share deer stuff. And it's like, you know, we're not necessarily taking each other's spots or giving each other like all of the details, because we're trying to be successful too, but we're sharing enough, we're enjoying the community, we're being together, and we're not trying to step on each other's toes or look like we're here to be a villain to the other guy. You know, it's just that even to people who don't know each other, whether it's a completely new person like you ran across, or a guy who's traveled to the Midwest that's been hunting for 25 years and is trying to shoot the biggest deer of his life, that community exists if you're willing to approach it like with open arms and just be like, you know, hey man, like, nice to meet you. It's just like the same thing. Put your best foot forward, like we talked about earlier. Shake hands, look a guy in the eye, talk, be nice, be respectful, you know, figure out how you guys can share the property, or, you know, maybe he was there before you that morning, you know, be respectful.
Right. Well, and even if it's a bad experience, it's like, and to go to the other side, plays devil's advocate to it, to where it's like, even if you maybe ran into someone who's not a hunter and they're really upset, like, the worst thing you can do is like add fuel to the fire and just like make them out to be the villain. Like, the end of the day is like, swallow the ego, swallow the pride, like, be proud of what you do. You didn't do anything wrong, as long as you didn't do anything wrong. But explain yourself and don't look at it as like this negative thing or make them out to be an evil person for the sole fact that they don't understand the way of life that you live because they honestly weren't brought up in it, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, just because you believe in different things doesn't make people inherently evil or bad. And that's where I think a lot of, even going further into it, is just like, as hunters, if someone's like, oh, I can't believe you would shoot a deer or a bear, because I had this happen with a gal via social media when I shared a friend's bear picture, and she just blew up on me, right? And I was like, hey, give me a call. I'm happy to have a conversation, get on the phone with you. And like this woman, and she did. She called, she's like, I'm like, if you want to have an honest conversation about this, like I will go through and have an honest conversation. She was livid in all
Yeah.
facets of it. And I just heard her out. I didn't hardly tell her anything about what I do and all that. She just needed to be heard, right? And I was like, I will
Yep.
jump on the phone and have this conversation and that. And at the end of that entire conversation, really, it's like I just put my perspective. I said, if you're okay with me sharing my perspective, I'd like to, right? And not just try and talk over her, right? And it's like I
Mm-hmm.
can respect where she comes from and all this stuff in that. And I'm not saying like every scenario happens like this, but it literally came down to where she's like, well, I guess I could see that side of things, like, but I couldn't ever see myself doing that, or, you know, why anyone else would want to. That's okay. I'm not telling you have to, or you have to completely understand it, right? Like, I appreciate you sharing your perspective in things. And I just try to open that up to where it's like, we got to drop the egos in that piece, right? And just quit trying to tell people what to do and how to do it, and more or less like show them how it should be done, right? And using really our platforms to be proactive in that. But you still there? Did I lose you? All right. We got a little bit of a lag here, a little bit of delay. We'll see if Jake comes back on. I think we might have lost him. Well, if that is the piece of the show, super, super pumped, happy, and excited to be able to have Jake on the show. I'm sure we'll have to do a second one as time ultimately goes on. You know, it's just one of those things. His phone might have died overall. It might be coming back up in here. I'm not entirely sure where he's at or what's going on, but definitely thankful for being able to have him on the show. Thankful to be able to have, you know, really just this conversation as a whole. And I'm sure we'll have to go through, like I said, do a part 2 on it. But with all of that being said, you guys, really with Jake not being here, I'm going to wrap the show up and just say thank you for listening to the show. And I would encourage you guys, if you got anything from this, like, Jake is a phenomenal individual. Definitely check out his contact information. I'll put it all down in the show notes. If you're on YouTube, check it all out there. Jake is a guy who is super big on, of course, just being able to experience more of the outdoors and getting other people involved in the outdoor space. So all the details will be down below. And I just encourage all you guys, get out and experience more of the outdoors, right? Be an individual that is not just telling people what to do, but show them how to do it. I think Jake and I were able to go through and ultimately hit on a handful of different topics that have been very controversial in the outdoor space. If we want to see the community go and grow and thrive, it's going to come up to us taking the first step to be the individuals who really
Sorry, am
lead
I
for
back?
the
Can
next
you hear me?
generation, and that it is not all just about the big bucks and everything that we chase. Like, that is good, great, and grand. You should have all aspirations of wanting to go out and harvest a good mature deer, but we shouldn't be making that the overall arching just focal point of everything of why we do what we do, but really look towards more of the idolization of just the community and bringing people together. It is the most powerful piece. It is the most important piece of everything that we do in the outdoor space, really the outdoor heritage as a whole. And I would encourage each and every one of you guys, whether you're a hunter, a fisher, anything of that nature, like, if you love the outdoors in any capacity, what got you involved? Better yet, who got you involved? How did you get involved? What community were you a part of? What individuals did that? Like, there was something that influenced you into it. Oh, he's back. This is great. Can you hear me? I think he's coming back in. We got Meh joining us back in here. Can you hear me? Maybe. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear
I
you.
might be back. Are we back?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, thank God.
Can you hear me?
I don't know what just happened. I I lost everything.
Okay.
So
You're
forgive
good.
me.
No, you're good.
But
Can you hear me okay though?
think I can. You're kind of cutting in and out for whatever reason. Not entirely
Okay.
sure why.
I can hear you. I mean, everything seems good on my side, but
Yeah, I'm
definitely,
good.
I think,
I'm good now.
okay, cool. It might just be catching up and everything on it. But no, I was like, well, we'll just kind of go from here. I was doing like a little bit of an outro. I was like, oh, maybe
Yeah.
his phone died and all this stuff. It was like, well, we'll just roll. I know we've been going for a minute. And of course, I got to probably go up and be dad and everything here pretty quick. But what I look at every aspect of the show. And I know we were getting into just kind of meat of different stuff. And I feel like we could talk for hours on this stuff. But I wanted to ask you more of a personal piece. Like, what are you looking forward to in 2025 here and just this season coming up? Like, what kind of goals and things are you ultimately working on?
I have my own goals as far as I would say I have a couple of goals. I think the first being I'm still chasing like my selfish goal is I'm chasing a really big deer in North Carolina that I'm excited about. I chased all of season last year and I'm excited to chase him again this year. Um,
Awesome.
my more important goal for 2025 is I'm really focusing this year on trying to take an active approach, even more so in being introspective and understanding of why I'm doing the things that I'm doing in the hunting community as well as in the communities that I'm invested in all aspects of my
Mhm.
life, whether that be in my wellness or in my mindset, the way I approach things, the way I talk to people, and trying to not be complacent in things. And I would say that 2025 for me is a year of how can I improve my mental approach to the world around me so that for the next 25 years, 33 years of my life, that I'm a better person because I went and did the work now. I want to, as part of that, I'm trying to be better in a lot of ways in how I listen, how I communicate, how I'm involved in different groups and people around me. But
Mhm.
even as well as that is like looking at the things that I'm involved in and making sure that it's like, spending time in places that mean things to me. Going hunting with my dad more while I can, spending
Mhm.
time with my
Yeah.
family more, being invested in things that I think as a younger guy, it's easy to get so caught up in the sprint of life that you're like, oh, I'll have time for that. I'll do that later. I'll do this. And the reality is like nobody's getting any younger and time's not stopping for anybody. And whether it's personal and self-improvement or whether it's just taking your dad turkey hunting or spending time with
Yep.
your grandparents or traveling to see a friend or I got to kick this year off doing just that. Like I was able to convince my older brother, and he didn't make it hard to convince him, but I made the time to have him at our Alabama deer camp, and he shot the first deer he'd harvested in over a decade, and I was able
Hell
to
yeah.
be there with him. And
Yep.
it was such an awesome moment to spend with my older brother in something that
Yeah.
I'm really passionate in and spend a lot of time in and he doesn't get the chance to do. And I just
Mhm.
want more moments like that. And for me to have more moments like that, I need to continue to grow as a human being, both
Mhm.
interpersonally, like physically, and then just in my overall approach to life, but also
Mhm.
focus on what's important at the end of the day and never give up the interest and the excitement around having these experiences and these adventures, but to make sure that I'm sharing them with people, whether they are newly in my life or have been in my life for a really long time, and inviting them into those opportunities. If they choose to not be involved, then that's great. But at least
Yeah.
I've made the attempt and the involvement and the investment to do that. And I guess like getting back to a good way to summarize it is getting back to making the woods and the wilderness a part of my life that I'm sharing with people and not just something that I'm going to escape the world that I live in outside of hunting, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, that's
and I think,
the go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, I think the last statement is just, I think growth in things like business and entrepreneurship and all that will follow because it's
Mhm.
all the same mindset, you know?
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. It's something, I put out again. I feel like maybe it's just we're in the same kind of stages of life because I put that out to my dad this year. We had a conversation earlier, and definitely like my goal, even with it is like I want to get Tina out on her first elk hunt. That's the ultimate goal. She's going to be turkey hunting for the first time here coming up because of friends locally, or being able to bring her out and that. But that'll be the first time she's ever harvested anything. And I am more excited about that than any hunt that I could ultimately go on this entire year, kind of thing. Um, is just to be able to have an opportunity to take her out, but also, bring Aurora along and figure that out. Right. But I posed it to my dad. We had a conversation to your point of like, we don't know when the last day is, right? Didn't know when the last days were for my grandfathers, and neither of them are here anymore, but they also taught me a lot of what I know today. And they're the ones who really got me introduced to the outdoors, right? One fishing, one hunting. Of course, my dad was in there too, but they're pillars in that. And it's now at the point where it's like, well, the largest pillar, for all of it is still here. So it's like take advantage of that while it is still here, to where hopefully I can be that pillar for my daughter and future, family overall. And then those around us, to your point, your brother, right? And trying to figure out like that's big piece, like how do we get more of them involved? But in that fitness and personal development side, and it's so cool to be able to see that that is something you're doing. And then, hey, the business will follow because, and I want you to hit on this a little bit, but I know for me, for a long time, I put outdoors hunting and everything on the back burner and said, when I get my job and everything rocking and rolling over here, I'll be able to have more time to do that and go further with those different things, to where it's like I really put a lot of what I did on the back burner. And maybe it's different for you in capacities and what you do for work. But I found out that like when I do all of this and focus on being a better version of myself and do the things that fuel the fire, all of this does better. Right. And
Yeah.
I asked Dad, I said, hey, when we were in a call, I said, hey, what's one thing this year that you're going to do hard? Like for you, like what's something hard you're going to do? And of course, my dad went straight in. He's like, well, I want to be able to improve, he went straight business, right? Of like, I want to be able to grow the business, X, Y, and Z, do this. I said, no. What are you going to do physically? And I'm glad I asked him in that kind of way to kind of see where his mindset was in. And I said, what are you going to do this year? What is the one thing that you're going to do that is going to physically test you? I didn't say test you. I said, what are we going to do that is going to physically test us in that sense? And he's like, shit, literally how he said, he's like, man, I don't know. I said, well, it is my goal for the year for us to physically do something together, right? That tests us. And, that we've gone out elk hunting, we've done this stuff, and that is physically demanding, right? And those phenomenal bonds and growth in that. But looking at, to where now we have conversations of looking to do like a rim to rim for the Grand Canyon, to where it's essentially a hike, us, but it's literally just a, hey, there, make it there and just hike across, do it in a period of time. But it's also to just spend that time together and go out and do something that it is a physically demanding experience, because I know that's a memory that we'll be able to have, when no longer able to share those memories. But that's something I would even say, for anyone listening, because it's honestly, it's strummed up a lot more conversations with my dad and I, and we talk regularly. But now it's like, it's the anticipation and the buildup of like, okay, we have this thing that we're going to work towards and have to battle towards kind of piece. And he's also like, he's like, well, I see you're doing some of that cardio stuff. Should I start like working out now? I'm like doing it. Like, it's just more in that sense. So I think it builds camaraderie. It builds just the ability to share more experiences overall. So I don't know if I just think there's so much that you're already doing that kind of mimics, or it's similar but different to what I've had conversations with my dad, or wanting to be able to just spend more time doing these things.
It's just I think it's important, like for a long time, like you set, just like you said, you set goals and you're trying to achieve those goals, and then the other things in your life are dependent upon you reaching those goals. But a lot of times the reality is at least in those goals are always evolving and changing, because you're always changing and you're always striving to push yourself harder to accomplish those things. So you never actually give yourself the opportunity to just get yourself in the right headspace. And I like use that term a lot, in the sense of like, focus on your mental wellness and your headspace, and it's like, if your happiness is predicated on all of these other things, you're never actually getting to, I guess what I'm getting at is like, I don't want to be the guy that at the end of my life, when I lay down on my deathbed, looks back and goes, I wish I had done this. I wish I had spent this time with this people. I wish I had felt this way. I wish I had. Nobody sits down at the end of their life, at least from what I see, and goes, man, I'm so glad I spent that extra time on those phone calls. I'm so glad I gave up that trip of hunting with my dad because I had to go do this for work, or I had to sit on the computer longer. It's like, there's a time and a place to get your work done. And, I'm not, as an entrepreneur myself
Mhm.
and, a business owner 8 years, I'm not diminishing the fact that sometimes you have to grind, and that's part of it. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
that's just life. But at the same time, it's important that you find a way to make both things possible in your life, and that you can,
Mhm.
on one hand, be grinding and building towards your business and your entrepreneurial goals, whatever they may be, if they are entrepreneurial, and on the other hand, still making time for your family, for your personal memories,
Mhm.
for your life, for the things that matter. It's like money only
Mhm.
goes so far, and you can't take any of it with you when you leave. That's for dang
No.
sure.
No. No.
And more importantly, you can't keep, like, the only thing you keep of the, like, at the end of the day, when people leave your life, whether it be your parents or other friends or whatever, you don't, the money and the time and the things that you've invested into them that are not memories don't go anywhere. I mean, like, they don't come with it. It's like you can't carry those along. Like, the things that I remember from the people that have passed away in my life are the memories I made with them when they were still here.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
it's like you got to focus on those types of things, whether they're within your hunting community or whatever. And it's like, work hard when you got to work hard, whether that's in your life, in the gym, in your work, whatever you got to do. But make time for the things that are really important. Make time to have a good headspace and be in the right
Yeah.
mental wellness, and, just do what makes
Mhm.
you happy, and just try to be a better person.
Yeah, no, it's I mean the whole piece of just even the show itself to where it's live a lifestyle allows you to experience more, right?
Yep.
Whether that's physically, mentally, spiritually, like emotionally, wherever you're at, like it should allow you to go out in the career side of it, all of it. It should allow you to go have more experiences with those people because to your point, you can't take any of this stuff with you. The only thing that is all, and you really can't even leave much of it behind, right? The true tangible things that you can leave behind is the legacy of the life that you lived. It is the impact that you had on people's lives while you were here and the experiences and memories that they'll be able to tell, right?
Yep.
Um, and really the lessons that you were able to give to different individuals through your life and how you carried yourself. And that's, I don't like to put into the world of death and all this stuff. And to your point, I'm like, I don't want to say it's the overall arching, like true tall tale sign of the impact your life had on people, but who shows up to your funeral is a good indicator of the impact that you had on people's lives while you were ultimately here. Now, does it have to be tons of people? No, it does not. But the people, like, what do they say about you during that time is a huge impactful thing. And that's where it's like, I know for me, like watching it's probably the only really true big regret that I have. I missed my grandfather's funeral, right? I did not go to his funeral. All I heard in the back of my head, I had an opportunity to do things with First Form, and a lot of people don't know this piece, but my grandpa always said, like, I remember, I feel hearing him in the back of my head of just like, go get it, Jake. Go get after it. Go make it happen. He was a huge piece of like just the entrepreneurship of just make things happen, but family was always like his sole anchor to all of it. And I prayed about that so much in many different facets. And I know there's family members who ultimately either have given me shit about it and or still to this day don't understand why I did what I did. But I wouldn't be where I am right now doing the things that I do and in all facets if I wouldn't have made that decision at that time into the capacity that I am. But it's really the only true regret that I have. Like in that piece, like other than maybe going on some of those other events, to your point, like not going to his funeral and doing that, I do. The only reason that I even felt good about doing it is I got to see him really in his last day, right? Prior to
Yeah.
all of that, and made a promise to him that I will make him proud and I will do whatever I need to do to go through and make that happen. Well, what I've learned is that it's not just about chasing the career, chasing the entrepreneurship side of things. It is the impact and the family, and really the family that's not even just blood, but the extended family through the relationships and the friends and the impacts you had, because the amount of people that showed up to my grandfather's funeral is a huge testament of the impact that that man had on individuals' lives, not just in his
Yep.
little community, but literally across the world.
Yep.
And that's something that it's always going to come back to people, right? we're social creatures by nature, and it's a good telltale sign of like what we're capable of doing if we make it about others. So
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
I went
agree,
on a
man.
rant.
No, I appreciate you sharing. I mean, it's you're spot on. I mean, it's I think it's just I don't know, man. Maybe it's that as I'm getting older, I'm just getting softer and sappier and whatever. But I just find that it's like I mean, I guess it's just like what you find value in at the end of the day,
Right.
and
Right.
the things and I'm far from perfect. I think everybody in life has made their fair share of mistakes and done things that maybe they regret or that they
Hmm.
would want to change. I don't want to stand up here on this soapbox and make it seem like, I haven't come a long way to be at the mindset that I'm at now, and I have a long way to go still. But I think that at least at this stage of my personal journey and my interest in my own life, in hunting and in business, it's about like just creating those positive memories and experiences and being someone that brings value to other people in a
Hmm.
way that is just good-hearted and authentic. And even if that's just like I'll give him a selfish plug here. Like I look at our friend AJ like that. Like that guy is the
I
most
gotta talk good
positive
about him.
individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That guy is the most positive individual, and he is always, no matter how down I am or whatever, like he's always just stoked to stoke me up.
Hmm.
And even if I know he's had a bad day, like he may be like, "Hey, dude, you care if I vent for a minute?" And he'll like, get out of his system and be like, "All right, what are you doing?" And like be just like it's like he's just pumped, man. Like and
Yeah.
he brings such a good vibe to my life, and my business partner Matt is the same way. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure those guys have feel like they have their own flaws and whatever,
Hmm.
but they take it. I've learned a lot from people like that, and just trying to not coming up in that football and athletic environment, you're rewarded for being hard all the time. Like that's the
Right.
way you got to be. You got to be the toughest, baddest dude out there all the time.
Hmm.
And in some parts of that, like some parts of that still exist to me and I love it. But when I leave the gym, that leaves me. Like I
Right.
don't try not to bring that to every other part of my life the way I used to when I was 22. I'm not walking
Hmm.
down the street trying to prove something, you know.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to bring good things to people, and I think that your life grows and improves,
Hmm.
and your hunting improves, your outdoorsmanship improves, your time invested in the woods, what you see when you're out there. If you're approaching life that way, you're going to interpret the landscape differently. You're going to interpret maybe big decisions you have to make differently. Just removing the ego as much as you can in a healthy way.
I think it all goes back to the to the very beginning of our conversation, or it really ties into it of you've done some of these phenomenal featured say videos, right, cinematography pieces, and to your point, it's not just about trying to put on a show, but you try and get to know those individuals, and it's a perspective. I think that being able to sit down with someone and have more of that like campfire vibe conversation with them really just comes from time and perspective, no different than like a Navy SEAL who's gone out and seen the worst shit possible in this life, and then meeting him on the street and thinking he's like a freaking teddy bear. You'd never understand what he's ultimately gone through, but like he's able to go through and turn that switch on just like someone could turn it on in the gym. But once they leave the gym, once they leave the battlefield, like they have an appreciation for life, an appreciation for what we get to do, and really are able to drop that ego and know what they're capable of doing, and that they just want other people to enjoy, right, the life that we have. Enjoy, I think tying into the outdoor piece is like between you and me is like I want people to get along and have fun in the outdoor space, to be able to go out and hunt, to be able to share it for generations and generations and generations to come. I want my siblings, I want your family, and that's where I think too is just like back and forth, and you get in like with AJ, as much as I don't need his head to grow any bigger than it ultimately is, right? Like he is a contagious energy. Like, bro, and it's why, again, this is too why, I think it's so powerful. Like AJ has never asked me to go hunting with me, right? He is insane with you. Is like you never like, oh Jake, can I come hunting to go doing X, Y, and Z. But because of the energy, right? I've said energy a lot on this, but it's true. It's the what you put out is what you get, to where it's like, dude, AJ is someone I want to share a campfire with. Jake is
Yep.
someone that I want to share a campfire with, right? And it's like, I know that even if we don't get anything, like that's not the expectation. It's the expectation that when we go on this hunt and we share this time together, there might be moments where we hate each other's guts and give each other shit, but we're going to be friends at the end of it and we're going to have a good time. And like
Exactly.
when AJ went out to Colorado with me, and there were a couple guys on that trip that hated my guts, like in all facets, right? In the sense of like I wanted to test them physically. Like I wanted to
Yeah.
see what they were ultimately made of, and I just hunt differently than other individuals ultimately do. I am very much a point A, point B, straight line is the best, fastest way to get there. Dude, we were going probably 2,000 feet vertical climb. I might be exaggerating, but it was like straight up through a canal where, I mean, we were literally using trekking poles to lift ourselves up onto the next ledge to get up. Like we were rock climbing. It was
Dang.
wild. Not something I tell my wife about, at least for a year or so afterwards. I definitely don't have none of the guys that I brought with. I was like, all right, don't tell your wives because you'll never be able to come back out here. Like, at least not with me. And, but there was a point where, you know, I'm just going and it's just bulldozer straight up, get to where we need to go. And I'll get there and I turn around and I'll try and go up and get it to where like I'll get up there and then be able to look back. And I learned this from my dad. It's how you rest. Like if you get ahead, you get to rest while everyone else is catching up. Once they catch up, you just take off again, right? Well, and just make sure everyone's still alive in there. But I would turn around every time. And here's AJ, like a freaking golden retriever. Like I'd catch him
Yep.
where he's like, you know, kind of looking down and he's like, you can kind of tell like there's a little bit of a thought process and he looks up and sees that I'm looking. He's like, oh, where are we going? Like it's just like
Yeah.
a dog ready to go catch a stick. And I was like, this guy is wild. And but again, like through the struggle, through the bond, no matter where we were at, like dude, everyone just became so much closer throughout that entire trip, and the stories that came out of that. It's again why it's like I want him to be able to share the experiences. I want to be able to share the experiences with him. And I think that's, you know, for anyone who's out there, like be someone who is genuinely curious and putting out that positive energy and that piece to being curious, to where I think that just has such a healing property for the outdoor community. And being there's like AJ is an individual who will be more excited about you going out and seeing your buck than
Yep.
him getting his biggest buck. Like he will hype it
Yep.
up. I'm sure you're probably a part of some of the text threads that ultimately that he has. And bro, there's not enough exclamation points that you can have in a text thread with AJ, and everything's in caps. And if it's not that, it's memes. Like
And
it's
it's not
just
to say that
it's
it's
all
not
there.
to say that you have to be that eccentric. He is who he is authentically, but just bring that, like, be somebody other people. I just want to continue to be better. Like
Mm-hmm.
I hope that as I've lived my life, even in my own faults, that I have been somebody people want to be around. But I know that there have been times where I certainly have not, and I want to and I try to be that individual now. But even as I continue to grow, I want and I hope other people, whether it's in the hunting community or in your wellness community, think about being a person that other people want to be around and be a part of in their life. And I was listening to a podcast on the shameless plug, the Modern Wisdom podcast with Chris Williamson, I think is his name. You know who I'm
Yeah,
talking
Chris
about,
Williams.
Jake?
Yep.
He was interviewing this guy, and the guy was this, I guess he's like this famous current cowboy thing, and he's just like, I'm a guy that I would buy a drink with me, you know? And I think about
Yep.
that statement, and it's like, you know, AJ is a guy that I would always have like that. I would, you know, and then
Mm-hmm.
I would always buy a drink for. I would always want a part of my team, my group, regardless
Yep.
of success or failure. You're the same way. A lot of guys, Cody's the same way. A lot of guys are that way that I have in my core group that I have, you know, continues to grow and build. And I look at myself like, would I do that with myself? And if I haven't,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't feel the same way about myself that I feel about them, what can I do to improve that so that I know they feel the way they feel about me, the way I feel about them? And it's all interpersonal work. It's all work on just being a better human, having a better outlook on life, approaching life in a better way, challenging myself and those around me so that we can grow and bond together. Like all of those things are just so pivotal and so key and so centered around just going through the shit together in a little bit of a
Yep.
way. And then also just being able to look at yourself and go, maybe I can change that. That's probably not the best way
Yep.
to approach that.
Well, and this is where it's like I bring AJ up, bring you up in this sense too, is like I've learned this from my own piece. Like I'm not the eccentric one, right? Or anything like that. To where I don't think like and I don't want to say AJ's eccentric because he's really not. It's just he puts off, like, you get close into his circle, he might be, but to you, it's like
In a
it's
good
still a
way, in a good
positive,
way.
100%.
Yeah.
And he is someone, and this is where I look at it as like I judge people on the sense of how are they spoken about behind closed doors? How would I speak about that individual when they are not there? How do other people speak about them when they are not there? I'll always leave someone up because sometimes people have bad experiences. That's why if someone talks trash about someone, like, one, is it really that person, or is this person just a trash talker, right? Because that's just who they are. So I always give everyone benefit of the doubt. But looking at it as like, for you, it's like, I know people speak great about you behind closed doors. I know I have nothing but great things to say about you behind closed doors and just who you are, right? But that's not because you are the golden retriever type in that sense, right? But it's like there's great things to be said on both sides because of the value, because of the relationship, and just honestly, like, the experiences that I've had. And that's just a personal piece, right? But I think that's something that everyone can look through, to where it's like, and how I look at myself, any relationship that I've ultimately had or, connect with, even when we like first met, is like, I go back through that as like, what could I do better? Can I be someone like, how are they talking about me, right? And in a selfish way, like, how is it being sold? Not to be like, oh, promote myself, but am I doing good? Like, am I a good steward of the lifestyle that I want to live? Because I know, especially now, and it's been heightened with having Aurora, and this is like, I look forward to you having kids one day, man, because the perspective, like, if it did anything for me, it gave like just I wouldn't even say a sense of, like, it's perspective, but just a sense of urgency of, how do I make sure I'm the absolute best for her? Right? And the best role model possible. Because that is like, again, and this is like in the piece, like, she's going to have friends. She's going to have different girlfriends. She's going to have boyfriends. There's going to be a lot of stuff. And those friends are going to talk about dad. And I want to be the dad that all the friends are like, God, Aurora's dad, like, holy shit, he's freaking awesome, right? Like, in a selfish way, like, I want to be that dad that all the friends talk about, right? And it's just, but in the good sense of, like, hopefully doing the right things. And I think that's, to your point, like, AJ's not even on this call. And we've talked and brought him up and like brought up other things. He's controlled the conversation that happens about him, to where now people are like, who the hell is this AJ guy?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it
Yep. It's
is
just,
so true.
yeah, like, just try. And I think it's easy, we fall into that. I'm not trying to sound like a broken record. We just fall into that position of like the world we live in today rewards instant gratification and a lack of discipline and rewards feeling comfortable. And a lot of those things, to get to those goals, to be that father or to be that friend in the group, means sometimes you just have to be like tough and to push through and to grind and to, I'm sure there's times where, AJ doesn't want to be the golden retriever, but he does anyways, because he knows
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. And there's times where I don't want to wake up in the morning and go hunt, but I know that it's the right time and I need to do that. There's times I don't want to write a contract for work, but I have to. It's like, it's just being uncomfortable. It's just like, and I just think that the personal side of things, like the introspective looking at ourselves type of thing, is really where, at this stage of my life, it's easy for me to go to the gym and be like, I'm going to go, I know how to do that. I know how to go lift. I
Yeah.
know how to go do that. There's things that are like the physical, tangible things are there. They're easy. I can go sit in a tree. I can go to the gym. I can go find a deer. But the stuff in my head is the stuff that is I think the most important. It's the hardest, for at least for me, it's the hardest growth to have, and it's also the most rewarding in the sense of the way I feel when it manifests in my responses to relationships and the people that are around me, and the way that I'm a part of their lives and what I can do and bring to them, you know, um, as opposed to just being able to tell somebody that I'm like, this is how you front squat, you know?
Yeah. 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 100%. 100%. No, man, I appreciate you being on the show, dude. And honestly, I just
Of course,
appreciate
man.
friendship. Like there's just so much to this. I mean, this is by far the longest show that I've ultimately done, and for a good reason, right? And dude, I know I've taken a ton of your time and everything, but I definitely appreciate you sharing this time with me because it's just, for me, I love to be able to find other individuals who have a passion for it and want. I can only hope that someone listens to this and just is like, shit, yeah, like those Jake
I
guys,
agree.
like they get it,
Those Jake guys.
right? And I'm gonna have to go check this AJ guy out too, but
Yeah,
these Jake guys, right? Like they're a
they're
hell of a lot more
they're
handsome than AJ, that's for sure. So,
he'd probably agree. He'd be
uh,
like, yeah, those are some handsome
yeah,
devils.
yeah, no, he would.
But but yeah, I hope they leave feel I hope somebody listens to this and goes, man, those guys are working.
Right,
They're
right.
working, they're working.
Kind of look at like wrapping it up, closing up here. I know we've talked about personal development, all of that, a lot of aspects to it. But man, if there's someone listening to this who is maybe in a hard spot of that personal growth, maybe it is the hunting side, the workout side, any of those things. Like I always like to have essentially guests like leave little nuggets for them, like whether that is a book you have read, a podcast you listen to outside of this. What are maybe some tools or resources that you have used that have helped you throughout really your own personal development journey?
Oh man, that's tough. But tough in a good way because I'm a little bit scatterbrained when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's just a wide array of different. I think it's easy. I promise I'm gonna answer this, but I think it's easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of resources that are out there
Mm-hmm.
from a creative and a content perspective to digest. Like I brought up the Modern Wisdom podcast with Chris Williamson. His discussions are great, but I compartmentalize some of the conversations because I'm not saying that every one of his podcasts isn't worth listening to, but I
Mm-hmm.
also listen to the ones that I am trying to build off of at that time. I'm taking bite-sized pieces. So like
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking through his podcast portfolio and trying to pick and choose things. And I think one of the things that's easy for people to do is whether you're listening to a podcast conversation or you're looking at books is you just start, but you start with bite-sized pieces. Don't just try to fix everything at once, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
right now I'm focusing, one of the things I'm focusing on is like communication skills and how I articulate things and how I communicate. Well, as I'm looking through whether it's the biggest podcast in the world with like Joe Rogan or whether it's, Chris's podcast or, even talking to my friends in my personal collective group and just asking them
Mm-hmm.
to see if they have time to listen and to what I have to say and be open to receiving the feedback to kind of what I'm
Mm-hmm.
processing is to focus on one thing at a time. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
simple thing. Everybody should know it, but it's easy to put aside. And it's like, well, there's all this self-help stuff out there, and it's like, well, you can just start. But if you don't have a direction, it becomes really difficult to make development. Just like I think in fitness and going to the gym is like, well, you could go and just do everything all at once, or you could be like, "No,
Mm-hmm.
today I'm going to work on this and I'm going to get really good at that. I'm going to I'm going to do this to the best of my possibility today. And then I'm going to figure out how to do that. And I'm going to go to this. And you just grow as you can in ways to where you don't overstrain your mental capacity to improve certain things at one time. And nobody is perfect. Nobody can accomplish everything all at once. It's important to remember that. There's a lot of things that we all have to improve. So put a list down. I like to write stuff down. I'm big on lists. So write a list
Yeah.
down think about it regularly, and then take an active role in finding content that speaks to you, or finding books that speak to you. Here, I'm gonna grab a book real quick. I'll show you. This is a great book. If you guys don't know, it's called The One Thing. It's by Gary Keller.
Mm-hmm.
It's the surprise, like the subtext is the surprising simple truth behind extraordinary results. The principle of the book is focusing on one thing at a time. It's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what I'm talking about, and not
Right.
like, if you're giving yourself to too many things at once, you're never giving yourself wholly to the one thing you're trying to accomplish, right? So it's one
Yep.
thing to diversify your interests and be interested in hunting and interested in this, but it's like, when it's time to go to the gym, I'm in the gym. I'm focused on
Right.
doing the best thing that I
Yep.
can possibly do there. I'm not allowing outside distractions to take me away from my goal there. When I'm in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the woods. When I'm sitting
Yep.
here trying to like think about a podcast that is going to make me think introspectively about how I communicate, and listening to a psychologist on somebody's podcast talk about communication behavior, I'm going to
Yeah.
go find that. I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to take notes and think like, okay, how does this apply to me? How do I get better here?
Mm-hmm.
And then and I focus on that, and I think that I would say that's the just don't bite off more than you can chew is the biggest thing that I would tell people. And it's okay to have that realization in life.
Yeah.
One thing at a time, to the best of your ability, and
Oh,
you'll get there.
love it. Love it. From that's on the personal development side. What about for someone who is a new hunter, maybe a tool or a resource that they're brand new to this and they're trying to figure some stuff out? Or, what is something or things that you would say, hey, get this, use this. This is a great resource to start looking at what you're doing.
Ooh, that's a great question. Best resource for new hunters, I would say, first is Instagram DMs. Honestly,
That's
and
awesome.
I'm
Yep.
not saying that you should go out and expect responses, but if you're
Mm-hmm.
hungry to learn, look for a mentor. And like,
Right.
social media is a great process for that. You'll probably find some people who don't respond and never check their Instagram. Cody DeQuisto.
It's so true. Funny, but true.
But then
Again,
you'll find,
how do you control the conversation that happens behind doors? We love Cody.
yeah, I'm
Cody's
just
awesome.
teasing. I love Cody. But then you'll have other guys who are Johnny on the spot, who are interested, who are like, they might be busy, but they're gonna turn around. Like, a great example of that is like somebody like Sam Soholt, or somebody like super
Oh yeah.
personable
Yep.
guy, awesome,
Yep.
great, has a big following, carries a lot of weight in our
Yep.
space. I'm not saying that he can get back to every DM you send him, but whenever I message that guy, he's like, "Hey, dude, what's up? Like, let me help you out. What do you
Dude.
need? What can I answer?" Like, so don't be
Yeah.
afraid to reach out to people and ask them
Mm-hmm.
questions, and look for a mentor, whether that's somebody that's a really involved mentor, or just a person that you are curious about, like, how they're successful. Some of my favorite hunting
Mm-hmm.
relationships in life have started from an Instagram DM, or walking up to somebody at a trade show, or at a deer expo, and just shaking hands and talking. And there's no
Yep.
better learning opportunity than that kind of growth. And it's like, if that's not a good answer for you, then I would say you learn like the rest of us and go to YouTube and podcasts and try to digest what you can. But the same thing applies. Go improve one thing at a time. If you're real new and you don't know
Mm-hmm.
what a deer rub looks like, just go out and try to find some deer rubs, and then like you figure out what that looks like, and
Yep.
then find out what a bedding area looks like. Bite-sized pieces
Mm-hmm.
coupled with people that you can build a circle of support and camaraderie and mentorship around you, where you have people to lean on, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
who you are, what your background is, or whatever. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It just means that your goal should be, I want to do this. I want to get passionate about this. You're the average of the 7 people you're around the most, or whatever that saying goes. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if I can add 7 people that I know I can shoot an Instagram DM or a phone call to, that can give me an answer about hunting, you're probably going to eat up a lot of ground really quick. you know
Yep. No, 100%. I think even going on that point, because they say it's like 5, 7 individuals. Like, you are the sum of the individuals that you surround yourself with, whether it's 5, 7 relevant. But I'd also go, I've always kind of looked at the same thing. Like, you are the sum of the 5 closest people to you and the 5 most recent books you have read, right? And
Yep.
I've really done that because that's one of those things challenging me in the sense of like coming from the perspective that I was not a good reader is
Yep.
what book have I read? What books am I reading, right? To where it's like you can learn, like you might have great friends and relationships around you, right? And these are individuals that maybe you've met them yesterday, or it's been a 30-year long relationship, friendship that's been there. I always think like a book or a podcast or even audiobooks, right? Like you're able to gather someone's 30 years of experience in a matter of a couple weeks, depending on how fast of a reader you are, right? Like going through that, I just think there's so much value that can be done in that amount of time, just like the book, The One Thing. Knowing that you're looking at that, I would even encourage you. I don't know if you've ever read the AMRAP Mentality by Jason Kalipa, but that is a very good book. It's honestly it's a pretty short read, but it's that AMRAP mentality, which he's a very well known CrossFit athlete, was one of the original games athletes, very good coach and all this, but he's got a great podcast as well. Is that AMRAP mentality of AMRAP means as many reps or rounds as possible, right, for that period of time. So if you have a 15-minute AMRAP, well, for that 15 minutes, there's nothing else you're thinking about. You're doing that workout full-fledged, and that's his whole perspective on really life. And he developed all this and just kind of this mindset when his daughter had cancer and they were going through all this stuff. Like he had to be 100% in on what's going on right now. To your point, the one thing, right? To where if it's the workout, all he's focused on is the workout for that 15 minutes. All right, now it's dad time. All I'm focused on is dad time right now. If I'm in work, I'm focused on work right now. So I think that's just another development piece for people in that. But I love it. I think your point, dude. I mean, going into the DMs, that is not what I kind of expected in there, but I love that answer because it is so real in it. I honestly didn't know what I was kind of expecting, but I love that.
Yeah, it's funny because I opened this up because I was like, I bet I have something. Literally, like I was sitting the book here and I opened it up and you were talking, and like I was like, I bet there's because I underlined like a lot of, like, I don't know if you can see, I underlined sections in books that are relevant that I want to remember.
Yeah.
And the first page that I opened up to is so applicable to this conversation. Not to read this like it's the Bible, but it's like, our purpose sets our priority, and our priority determines the productivity that our actions produce. So our purpose sets our priority, and our priority determines the productivity our actions produce. So if you approach something
Yeah.
with the right purpose, that gives you the ability to understand your priority. And that priority determines how productive you are at accomplishing your actions and what you actually end up producing at the end of the day. It's like what is your purpose? What's your purpose in life? What's your purpose in those things? If you're like, when you're pushing yourself and you're doing the MRAP mentality or whatever it is, like, identify that purpose, approach it with the right way, determine what you need to do to accomplish that, and then apply it to your goals and to those things, and ultimately, get the productivity you can out of that.
Right.
So,
Yep. No, I love it.
but yeah,
Love it, man. That's definitely that's a book that as soon as you put that out, it's like, oh, yep, I need to read that one. I haven't read that one, so that'll be a good one to be able to jump into. So
selfishly, I mean, I say, not selfishly, I'm not a good book reader, so I don't want to act like I've got some library of books. This is one of the few that I have read and hold some value in, and I need to read more. I'm big on podcasts. I'm big on listening, just because I can do it in, whether it's intentionally or passively. And but I need to make, one of the things I love about the process of sitting down with an actual book and reading is it's involved. It requires you to be invested in that process, and that plays exactly into this entire conversation that we're having, is like, approach things in a way that is invested and not necessarily passive. Focus on the one thing, focus on your growth in that individual category, and then go from there. And I think going back to hard copy and just reading books as opposed to listening is probably a good area of opportunity for me. And that's something I truthfully had not been thinking about up until just now. So you
yeah,
definitely have added
it's
something for me to grow with.
an easy way to look at it is like, man, because it's so intimidating to look at a book even that thick, right? Like, man, fuck, a lot of pages there. It's going to take forever. But I mean, you can finish if you did 10 pages a day in a month. within a month you'll read a 300-page book, right? So it's like it just depends on, do you make, and this comes down to that daily discipline, right, of just 10 pages, right? To where, it doesn't have to be things like 75 hard or any of that kind of stuff. Like I look at it as like I take the, 30, 45 minutes now that it takes me to read 10 pages, right? And just have to put that off to the side and prioritize that, just like the workout, because that for me, like going to the gym is the easy piece, right? And then it's like, okay, make that a priority, make the nutrition a priority. If I can do 10 pages a day, I'm literally gaining people's 30 years of experience within a month's time, depending on how big the book is, right? And it's just something that it's a powerful piece to your point. Like your point, and honestly, you do a better job at it than I do because I don't underline every single thing that I read, right? I'm not, and I know you don't have a ton of them, but the fact that even the ones that you do, you're underlining those key little points and pieces, and that's something that I used to do, like back when I was going through them much more, or like doing 75 hard. I made it a point that I underline stuff, but it's honestly something I've gotten away from. So good on you for doing that, because not a lot of people do that. But all right, well, we could talk forever and we could keep going, and I know we could.
Like we've tried to end this
Different
thing
things.
3 times
I'm,
already.
I know, and I'm slowly watching your room get a little bit darker and darker, and just like,
Oh,
cause
it's
I could
pitch
tell
black
like the
outside
lights
here.
gone down. Yeah, yeah, 100%. But no, dude, I'm sure there'll be more conversations to come. Definitely, again, the time and day will ultimately come, be able to share a campfire story, and we'll probably stay up way too late during it. But if people wanted to be able to connect with you, just kind of going forward, like what's the best way for them to be able to reach out, connect with you, see the content that you put out and produce? Like, what do you got?
Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure being here. If you guys are looking to talk to me, you can always find me on Instagram at the Lishen. That's TheLishen on Instagram. Or for any of our work, I recommend checking out the Outdoor Creatives Co. channel on Instagram. That's this community that we're developing to offer not only podcasts, but just educational material on creativity, how to get involved, how to get interested in creative work in the space. And then my business partner and I's personal business is Land Limited on Instagram as
Mm-hmm.
well. Through any of those 3 channels, whether it be my personal, the Outdoor Creatives Co-op that we've been working really hard on in the podcast there, or Land Limited, you'll be able to learn more about myself or the awesome guys like Matt, Adam, or any of the guys that partner and support our endeavors and what we do. And they share a lot of these same values that we've talked about all of this podcast, and are just good, wholesome people that I would recommend. If you have questions about anything from hunting to fishing to shooting, photos with a camera, you can Instagram DM. They're always happy to talk within the bounds of what they can with their work schedule, and just be
Mm-hmm.
good, friendly guys and girls. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's hopefully that's clear and everybody can find
Yeah.
something there for
No,
some value
I
for
love it. I am a little upset though that you have not corrected me in pronouncing your last name, because here I'm over here saying Lishan, and Lishan. Like, come on, dude. I was like,
Dude,
oh
I'm
my
so
God.
used to it. Everybody says it so much that it's like at this stage of the game, I'm just letting people choose. Like of the on the list of priority of things to worry about, it's minuscule.
Yeah. All
So
right. All right.
I
Well, all right.
but
Well, I'm not gonna make.
for all those
Yes.
listening and Jake, it's a long eye.
Long eye. I love it. I love it. Hey, are you going to be at any shows or events that if people saw you coming up or wanted to maybe meet you in person, is there anything that ultimately they could connect on?
We're working on getting dates out for the road show. Cody and I have been talking pretty adamantly a couple times a week, working on dates and scheduling for that. So, please just stay tuned there. We've had some people reach out asking about that. So, if you're interested in
Cool.
coming or meeting myself or anybody else that shares the kind of thoughts and mentalities, we'll have more stuff for you there.
Hmm.
I unsure on which consumer related or at just open to the public related shows that I'm going to be able to go to for the rest of this year.
Hmm.
Hopefully make a trip out to First Form, see Jake
Always.
and hang out with the crew there, get a workout in. But other than that, if you're going somewhere, if you're here on the East Coast, if you're within driving distance of the Carolinas or Virginia or in the Midwest in the fall,
Hmm.
I love driving and meeting new people. I'm always happy to meet up, grab a beer or a coffee, and hang out, whether it's at a show or, in the middle of deer camp.
Well, make sure you got that October, November-ish time in there around Halloween at some point for a Wisconsin deer camp. So
I need to, yeah, I
get in
missed
there at some
last
point.
year's and I was sad about
Uh-huh.
that. So
Yeah.
I need to get that. I need to lock in on that this year.
Yeah.
So
All right. All right. Well, all right. We're going to wrap it up now. Fourth time's a charm. So
four times the
appreciate
charm.
you being on. Definitely, I am going to go through for all you guys listening. Drop stuff into the into the not comments, but the show notes. If you guys are on YouTube, definitely if you have questions for Jake or myself, drop them into drop a comment down below. Definitely if you're going to be at the road show or any of those kind of things, let us know. I'll also put information in the notes on that as far as like an event, things that you're able to connect with. It's one that I was able to go through, and I'll honestly like where a relationship ultimately was built through was just kind of that relationship and being able to meet at the road show. So highly recommend you guys checking that out as those dates come to fruition. But other than that, I'll drop all the information down below. And if you guys have questions, definitely reach out. So appreciate everyone listening along. Jake, appreciate you being here, and love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.